Welcome to day 2 of the NFL draft coverage here, Fantasy Alarm and SiriusXM. We're going to be here for the next several hours, breaking it down as we did on day 1. I'm Adam Ronis from Fantasy Alarm, joined by Bob Harris from Football Diehards, Jeff Ratcliffe from Pro Football Focus, Jennifer Piacente from Fantasy Alarm, and of course, Lisa Ann from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It's going to be a little bit more of a rapid pace tonight as the picks fly in. Won't be as much time between as last night. But, Bob, let me start off with you. What is the storyline that you're looking at here going into night 2?
Big story here is I received a restraining order from Melvin Gordon, so we won't be mentioning him anymore. Beyond that, look, we're going to look at a lot of running backs tonight coming off the board. We saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire come off last night at Kansas City at the end of the first round tonight. Deandre Swift has a long list, could have 5, 6 go off tonight. Entirely possible. More quarterbacks, more wide receivers. Going to be a lot of skill players going, and that's what we're after.
Lisa Ann, what was your biggest takeaway from day 1?
Besides the picks, I really like the intimate feel of the virtual draft. I have a suggestion to add a layer. I think there should be a camera in the players' homes that are already on teams. Can you imagine if we had a camera on Aaron Rodgers when the Green Bay Packers made that pick? I mean, this just adds so much. We're missing an opportunity here. So my takeaway is I'll be pitching this for future drafts, even though they will be in person down the road. I just think the angle from every player on every team would be pretty interesting.
I think we're all pretty sure what the reaction would have been from Aaron Rodgers when they took the quarterback there. And I don't know if they would have been able to air it, but hey, unfiltered, uncensored, we would have loved it. Jeff, we signed off on air last night before the Chiefs made the last pick of the first round. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a lot of people excited about that for fantasy. What's your takeaway with him going to the Chiefs?
My takeaway is this is a very intriguing fit. Initially I did not think they were going to address the position. Of course, when you're the Super Bowl champ, you can make a luxury pick or two, and that's exactly what they did here. And when I look at him, the player he has similarity to is Brian Westbrook. And fantasy players, longtime fantasy players, will remember that fondly, the Andy Reid, Brian Westbrook pairing. Edwards-Helaire, a 3-down back, a guy who can contribute immediately in the passing game. Now, I initially do think we're going to see Damian Williams in September, but remember, like Philly last year, we saw Jordan Howard in September and October. We didn't see him after that point. Right. Miles Sanders took over. Edwards-Helaire is going to take over even earlier. I expect him to be a 3rd-round pick when August drafts roll around, and as of right now, he is the de facto number 1 in rookie dynasty drafts.
Yes, I had Miles Sanders in a few leagues last year. You had to exercise a lot of patience, but he did pay off big time at the end of the year. Jennifer, what is something you're looking for tonight? What do you want to see happen here in round 2?
I want to see Green Bay get the weapons that Aaron Rodgers deserves. I mean, this is ridiculous. I'm hoping they're going to take that early Mims pick, but we'll see what happens. I just like to see a little bit of justice here for Aaron. I understand, nobody's really crying for Aaron. Aaron's going to be okay.
Other than Aaron.
It feels a little bit like there was
maybe.
A friend said to me it felt like a mob hit, because it's like he was so nice with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur was so nice to him. And then all of a sudden, bam, just sniped him with that pick. So I like to
Bob, now that you've had a day to digest it, and obviously some of those receivers that we were hoping would land in better spots did it. If you're drafting today based on the 6 receivers we saw go in the first round, is there one that stands out? Is it a group that's clustered? Who do you like the best of those wide receivers as of right now from a fantasy perspective?
So I'm a little at odds with Jeff, I know, on this one. I like Jeudy. I like the landing spot, Jerry Jeudy in Denver. I think he's a more polished receiver. One of my concerns about all the receivers in redraft this year is the notion that they're not going to get that time to develop, learn the system. That's more important for the receivers than it is for the running backs and the quarterbacks. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't think it matters for Joe Burrow, but the rest it does. But so I'm dialing back a little bit. But I think Jeudy, just being a polished route runner, maybe gives him a little bit. I'm a little concerned about, he hasn't faced a lot of press coverage, but he's really smooth, really slick. And I think maybe they can work him into the mix. I like what they've done to this offense by adding him. I hope they can put it all together before the season starts.
Jeff, he said it's the opposite viewpoint of you. So how do you feel about it?
Well, somebody on Twitter said today, and Twitter has been amazing the last 24 hours. Thank you, Twitter. Really appreciate you guys. But somebody said to me that, hey, Calvin Ridley didn't hurt Julio Jones, because I initially said this was going to hurt Courtland Sutton. And there's only so many balls that goes around. Sutton's target share is going to take a hit. But the concern here is, Calvin Ridley went in with Matt Ryan under center. Judy's going in with Drew Lock under center. Sure. We don't know what Drew Lock is just yet. There were a couple moments last year where he flashed upside, but that was about it. He's about as unpolished as they get when it comes to starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I agree. Judy, polished route runner. Yes. Great prospect. Yes. Bad situation, though, for fantasy purposes, at least in the short term. So that's why I'm down on him.
Right. Well, I'm just curious who you like best. Yeah.
Unfortunately, right now, it is Ruggs. Ruggs projects out the best. He's stepped into a situation where he doesn't have competition among the wide receivers for targets. Darren Waller's there. Darren Waller is very likely going to lead the team in targets, but nobody else really threatens me there. CeeDee's in probably the worst situation because of, the presence of Gallup and Cooper. I like Jefferson's landing spot for the long term because Adam Thielen is a bit older and he steps into an immediate number 2. Rager is in a weird spot because of the tight ends and they usurp so many of the targets. So, and Ayuk's a freak. He's a freak in nature from an athletic standpoint, but San Francisco is kind of, one of those nebulous teams right now for me. So I would say Ruggs probably the best. Judy, then I have Jefferson actually ahead of Lamb, which I never thought that was going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think anyone did. Lisa and obviously we're big Cowboys fans, and we were on the live stream, and I saw once San Francisco passed on a wide receiver, I said, I think Jerry Jones might go CeeDee Lamb. As much as I wanted them to fill the need on the defensive side, they went with best player on the board, and some people do that in fantasy sometimes, and the Cowboys said they had CeeDee Lamb 6th on the board. What was your reaction watching when you saw the Cowboys take CeeDee Lamb?
I thought of you always talking to me about that in fantasy. It is best player available. I think this helps Dak, but it does hurt Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But for me, it really does help Dak. And it was maybe not ideal because we need other positions more. But how could you leave him there and allow somebody else to get him was really my thought process.
Yeah, Jennifer, we were talking about it yesterday as well. I know you were really excited for it.
Yeah, if for no other reason than Philly was coming up with a pick right after us, and they needed a wide receiver. So what are you going to do? Let it keep falling? I mean, that's basically what happened with Jerry Jeudy. He kind of fell to Denver, right? We're going to let them fall to the Philadelphia? No way. So we had to take CeeDee Lamb. And, he can run in this. He can be in the slot. He can be on the outside. We lost Randall Cobb. There's ways to use him. And, the argument, of course, being like, but if we don't have defense, what are we going to do? Well, Kansas City won the Super Bowl last year. Let's just pound it. Just pound the offense, and we'll figure out the defense. We got Aldon Smith. He could be a winner.
Does anyone think Dak Prescott is QB3 right now?
I'm at 4.
4.
That's where I'm at as well. And some of this has to do with that defense is, they were not good last year. They've lost some bodies this year. Maybe they have to put a little more offensive effort in, make some more big plays. And I think Dak with his mobility, I'm with Jeff on this one. I said same range.
So who is the 3? Is it Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson?
Murray.
Russell
for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. I've been saying it for years. Imagine they let this guy throw a little bit more. I mean, if you look at his pass attempts, how low they are and what he's able to do, and even last year, he got off to a really fast start, kind of slowed down a little bit. If they just unleash this guy, the numbers he could put up could be ridiculous, and he's already a good fantasy quarterback.
I mean, you also have to think about it's Mike McCarthy now. Mike McCarthy likes to run out 3 wide receiver sets. So it's a different coach. It's a different system.
It's the same system, actually. It's going to be the same OC. So they're running the exact same offense as last year. McCarthy's going to kind of take a hands-off, be a leader of men as opposed to kind of micromanager. And I think that's how they got this ultimately to work there. So that's the one thing where everybody's saying, hey, I'm concerned. And I'm glad you brought that up, Jennifer, because, hey, that's the widespread perspective. But it's really going to be the same offense. No worries for Zeke here. We're going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver set as well because, hey, Randall Cobb was out there a lot last year. It's just the injuries, though, when a lot of people are pointing to Randall Cobb and the numbers he put up last year. Remember, Gallup was banged up. Cooper was banged up. So I don't know if we can necessarily guarantee that this year because they are younger guys.
I do think that's a pretty interesting dynamic for Dallas. For McCarthy in particular, a guy who kind of gets a setback, had the really, negative reporting come out that he was disengaged, disinterested, kind of phoning it in, spent the year off, steeping himself, as he said, in analytics, comes in, says he's going to learn the language, not put in a new scheme. I just, here's a guy who may be a little bit humbled and ready to come back with something to prove. And I think maybe the Cowboys offense benefits from his presence and the consistency both.
We got the Bengals on the clock, so finally it started. 5 minutes left for the Bengals. Jeff, where do you see the Bengals going with this pick?
Ooh, that's a good question. The nice thing for them is they're actually in a pretty good spot when it comes to skill position players. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them address the defensive side of the ball. There are a lot of very interesting players still on the board at corner. And, potentially they could look offensive line as well. There's nothing better than adding to that stable when you draft a quarterback. And, hey, there's guys like Ezra Cleveland was not drafted in the first round. A lot of people thought he was going to go in the first round. So there's some value to be had on the board.
Lisa, and you have been taking some of your rookies I've seen in your mock drafts. How do you feel about A.J. Green now with Burrow there at quarterback? The guy's been hurt the last few years. He's getting older. Are you buying back in, or are you passing because of the age and the injuries that have occurred the last few years for him?
Everything is so different as well now, not having camp and not knowing what the schedule is going to be. I would totally have more faith in A.J. Green because I think he'll bring some, veteran moxie, and I think he'll really want to work with Burrow. But remember, he wasn't really happy about Dalton not being a part of it. They are best friends. They see each other every day on and off season. So that little bit tugs at me a bit. But I don't want any new pairings to be focused on my fantasy football teams right off the bat, especially when one part of the pairing is a rookie, because this bonding time, this getting to know how you communicate together, getting to even understand how your coaches communicate is just invaluable. And it's going to be weird for all of them to just have to jump in and go, okay, it's go time. And we don't know how long that's really going to take till they get to spend that time together. So I do worry about it more because of this situation than I would normally, because I have a lot of faith in A.J. Green.
Same thing in radio. It's taken years for us to get our chemistry developed. I don't even know if it's there still after all these years. Jennifer, how do you feel about that? Do you shy away from receivers going to new teams? We've seen it year after year. Even a guy like Odell Beckham last year, I know he was banged up and playing through injury, but he did not produce what people drafted him for. How do you feel about receivers going to a new team and working with a new quarterback?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something to take into consideration because it does have a lot to do with rhythm. It has to do with connection. That's just the way it works. And as Bob mentioned earlier, it's a lot harder for a wide receiver to come in and learn everything and get the rhythm than, say, a running back. So rookie running back's a little easier to trust, but a wide receiver, you just don't know. So I'm always more cautious there.
Jeff, for Burrows at quarterback, where do you have him in your preliminary rankings?
I'm actually really surprised. I have him at 15. Blown away by how he projected out. But the thing about Burrow that really impresses me is his mobility. Going back and looking at how he was able to run, not just this year as well. It was the previous year. He showed mobility. He's got better wheels. He's more athletic than I think a lot of people give him credit for. So that adds to it. And, man, he's projecting out as basically a front-end quarterback, too. He's going to be in the conversation when we get to August drafts as a late-round quarterback. He's certainly going to be in the two-quarterback league conversation as well. And it's really encouraging. Plus, game script-wise, they could be playing from behind a little bit as well, so you could pad those numbers.
Yeah, and some good teams in that division as well that they'll be facing. So they should be playing from behind, especially in the division games. As it looks like the Bengals finally, the pick's about to be in. Bob, when you look at the Bengals, who do you prefer, Tyler Boyd or A.J. Green?
First of all, on the age issue for A.J. Green, sources close to me tell me old guys get it done. That aside,
another Melvin Gordon reference.
I'm probably, I'm gonna probably wait and see who's cheaper, right? This is just one of those cases where I like two guys fairly equally. I'm gonna kind of watch ADP and see who's cheaper. I think maybe you get the value on Green though because of the year-long absence, and if they're both similarly priced, that's what I'll go after.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I feel like every year there's always a few players that you're always on the fence on. And right now, in my early analysis, it's AJ Green because we've seen what he's done over the years. I know Jeff talked about it yesterday, but I mean, the injuries are real. We see this with wide receivers. Right. Once you get 30, 31, it really doesn't get better most of the time. So I feel like Green is a polarizing player in fantasy where the people who love his talent are either going to be in on him or you're going to have someone who has the stance of Jeff and is like, look, I'm out and I'm not going to take him. So I think he is one of those polarizing players for this year.
That's a sexy pick. They picked T. Higgins.
Oh, there we go.
That's sexy right there.
Interesting. So
speaking of AJ Green, he gone.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, talk about this pick because I think when we brought it up before, we kind of said they kind of don't need wide receiver, and they go with T. Higgins here. There's AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, Ross. What's going on here, Jeff?
This is AJ Green's replacement. That's what's going on here. John Ross is a field stretcher. You have a great slot receiver in Tyler Boyd. Now you have a guy who can play X receiver for you, big body guy, can move. Not the fastest, but at his size, he's got very good speed, can play above the rim, can really do everything that you want him to do, and he's played at a big-time program as well. You get Joe Burrow a weapon now for the next how many years? I love that pick. It's, hey, they need defense. They need help on the right side of the offensive line, but this is just I'm selfish. This is sexy for fantasy. This is awesome.
Yeah, we love good things for fantasy. Bob, what's your take on this with Higgins going to Cincinnati?
Exactly what Jeff said. I mean, I think we've seen multiple comparisons to AJ Green, from some of the draft nicks out there. My friend Matt Wallman has compared him to Hakeem Nicks. So, I mean, big body. He's a 6'4", 215-pound guy. I mean, you just says AJ Green all over it. This is a look going forward. It'll be interesting to see, how the usage splits out this year. I feel like every time I dismiss Green on a week-to-week basis, he comes out and slaps me silly with like one of those multi-touchdown games, etc. But I think expecting the consistent production out of him right now, you're putting yourself a little bit at risk.
You didn't get smacked around last year, so not too much facial bruising there since he was there. Lee Sam, what do you think about Joe Mixon, the talk of a potential holdout? Is that something that worries you right now? If you're doing a draft this weekend, what does this do for Mixon?
I think the timing of it is really poor, and I think anyone who didn't really play into the reality of what took place last year with Melvin Gordon is going to be faced with making this serious. Are you going to take this risk? Do you really want to waste time on your bench by making yourself have to have the right handcuff within your draft? I mean, how do you want to go about this? For me, it's kind of a stay away. I always feel when people aren't emotionally invested, when you want out, it's kind of like a bad relationship, and how hard are you going to work for that bad relationship? So I think in this condition, I'm going to really stay away. And I really think with what they're doing is they're not really going to fight for the run game right now with this arsenal of receivers. So I would be kind of leaning back on Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I tend to stay in relationships a little bit too long. So maybe at a point further down the road, you can give me some advice on how to get out a little bit quicker.
But I do. But you know what? You do just like Joe Mixon did. You start to hold out. You threatened to hold out. You know what I mean? But you talk about it for too long, man.
Adam, you just want to avoid someone slapping the franchise tag on you. Otherwise, you're good. Yeah. Right?
Done a good job avoiding that so far. So we'll see. Colts are on the clock now. Jennifer, what would you like to see them do?
I want to see them get a wide receiver. They need one badly.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of good receivers left. Yeah. It looks
still
like
Mims, Chenault still out there. Hamler's still out there. There's a lot
Michael
out there
Pittman.
available.
It is
Michael
Pittman from US.
Wow.
Bob, how do you like this fit with Indianapolis for Pittman?
It's Devin Funchess part 2, except better, right? I mean, the big body guy. Look, Pittman is a big physical player, but he does a little more well-rounded than what we saw maybe from Devin Funchess before he was injured. The brief glimpse we got of him, and it looked good. Look, I think it's a good pick for them. They need a big body guy, and now they have it. He'll make a nice compliment to T.Y. Hilton.
Jeff, what do you think? Obviously, they do have T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell in his second year, Jack Doyle at tight end. What kind of target share can we expect from Pittman in Indianapolis?
Well, I don't know if it'll be that much, at least initially, but you would have to figure he's even an upgrade on somebody like Zach Pascal.
Yep.
T.Y. Hilton's sneaky old, by the way. He's already over 30 years old. That kind of surprised me. It snuck up on me, but that happens in the NFL. The thing I like about Pittman, he's about as sure-handed as they get. 5 drops in his college career. Now, to be fair, he really didn't have much in terms of usage until this past season, but obviously we know the pedigree is there. And the guy, I mean, from a size standpoint, you can't teach the size that he has. Not going to blow you away with speed, but he's going to fit a need that they have. Now they got the speed guy last year. Now they get the big body guy. I like this. We'll see what happens in the long term of quarterback, though, because Phillip Rivers ain't going to be there for very long.
Yeah, Lisa and, Rivers we saw last year, the arm strength just not there. Moving on to Indianapolis, do you think he could be a decent backup quarterback, or you feel like he's towards the end?
I think he's going to be a decent backup quarterback. I mean, he's going to be working with a better line than what he had with the Los Angeles Chargers. He's also going to be playing at a better stadium. I think we all forgot to adjust our expectations for the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers, both playing in really makeshift stadiums that hurts their play. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a kickback from Phillip Rivers. But again, at his age, I would really love to see him have more time to work with these players and get to know them. Hopefully they're communicating a lot and doing this bonding by FaceTime, Skype, everything else.
He's got like 8 kids at home, so they're probably all
9.
in the backyard. He's giving them 9. Giving them all different, you're T.Y., you're Michael Pittman, they're playing.
I mean, 9 kids. I mean, I can't even imagine having one, and this guy's got 9. I have no idea how he does it, and he plays football, and it seems like he's always in a pretty good mood, too.
Except when he's on the field smack talking. He's supposed to be a pretty good smack talker for sure. I will say his kids are probably not happy with their new living state. When you leave San Diego, California, you're kind of ruined for anywhere else in the U.S.
Well, plus look where they went, too. I mean, right? Going from there to Indianapolis.
Shout out to all the Indy viewers right now.
I'm sure even if they live there and you're comparing it to San Diego, I think they would agree, don't you? I would hope so. I've never been to San Diego, but I heard it's very nice.
They're laughing at home with a lot more of their paycheck, so they're fine.
We got the Lions on the clock. Where do you think they go, guys?
Running back would be fun.
Blacklock?
Yeah. I was thinking that they might go running back in this draft, and that's going to be intriguing to see what they do. They obviously have a lot of needs, too, on the defensive side as well. So
Are we still kind of hoping that DeAndre Swift ends up in Miami? It seems like it should be a destined thing. Maybe the Lions swoop in here.
It's possible. Obviously, we're waiting for that running back to go. We thought Miami could do it yesterday. They didn't, and it looks like they're in a spot where it's possible it could happen. But Detroit just couldn't get interceptions last year. So we'll see if they do go on the defensive side. But it would be interesting to see what they do at running back. How do you guys feel about Kerryon Johnson right now?
I lack the trust. I mean, look, again, we're drafting, especially this year more than ever, clear path to workload. And, I think if he comes back and he starts out the season healthy, he's going to have that. Just how long does he have that clear path? I don't know. My expectations are high for Bo Scarborough. I thought that was kind of it is
DeAndre Swift. So
there it is.
Back to Detroit.
Sorry, Kerryon.
Jeff, how do you think this plays out? Kerryon Johnson there. Now DeAndre Swift from Georgia. Is he going to be the main back? Is this going to be a timeshare? How do you see this playing out? Or what do you think of Swift?
This kind of answered one of the questions that I had about Swift, whether or not NFL teams were going to view him as a 3-down back. I think the answer now is decidedly no, that is not the case. Kerryon Johnson will be involved, but any of the shares that you were hoping to get in the passing game, that's probably going to go Swift's route. This is a full-blown committee. This is Belichickery at its finest from a Belichick disciple. This is going to be a conundrum for a lot of folks every week. It stinks. This is another one where the destination just doesn't match the player. I really hope Jonathan Taylor lands in a good situation.
Hello, Miami.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. I don't see a running back going for a couple picks. We'll see. But, Bob, you agree with Jeff? You have a different stance? How do you feel?
Exact same stance. I mean, couldn't have said it better. The Belichickery goes on. This is a Matt Patricia. We see it with every single move he makes and every single approach he takes to coaching this team. According to Darius Slay, it's working really well. And I guess, that's the thing. They got to start winning at some point for this to really take hold and for the culture to root in and for the players to buy in. But as they switch in some of these new guys, I just see this total committee approach. Look, it was going to be a committee in Miami. I mean, just about everywhere is going to be a committee. But I don't know. I think with Kerryon Johnson, a younger player, I'm not liking this at all.
Lisanne, what's your outlook for the Detroit offense for fantasy this year?
Yeah, when it comes to Kerryon Johnson, I'm with Bob. It's a real touch and go situation. I only had him in a couple of leagues last year. It was a lot to manage, and now you're looking at this and wondering how much opportunity he's going to lose. So there's just a couple teams where I try and stay back until there's an injury and something is more solid, or until something changes. So that won't be a team I'm looking to jump into the running back game.
Jennifer, the Giants are on the clock. Do we see the run of offensive players come to an end? Do the Giants go defense?
They're going to go defense. I think they're going to go Julian Okwara. I think they're going to take an edge.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I guess there's always a chance they could take a wide receiver, but it seems like they have a lot of needs on the defensive side.
It does. And, they still have time to get a wide receiver. As we've said over and over again, there's a lot of depth in this wide receiver class. They have Darius Slayton there. They have Saquon. So I think I'd like to see them shore up their defense.
Jeff, where do you think the Giants go? Who are some of your top players that could fit for the Giants with this pick?
Well, I think that edge is probably one of the big priorities. The kid out of Penn State, Yetur, blanking on his last name, Matos. He's in the mix. Zach Bond could potentially fill a need for him as an edge guy. I think that makes sense the most for them, but they do have a lot of needs. I don't think it's a skill position guy. I really don't.
Yeah, I'd be surprised at that too. I just don't. It seems like they're pretty good in that spot. Bob, how do you feel about the Giants from a fantasy perspective? Obviously, they took Thomas in the first round there, bolstered that offensive line a little bit. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is going to be one of the first picks, probably number 2 for most people after Christian McCaffrey. How about their wide receivers?
I think Darius Slayton is a guy we all kind of have an eye on as maybe a value play you can get a little later, although current ADP is not that far off from Sterling Shepard, or maybe Golden Tate's the guy that goes overlooked. This might be another situation where I'm buying the cheapest piece. I love Daniel Jones. I hope the price remains low. I think he has a lot of upside. I think we saw it last year. Needs to hold on to the football, and maybe they get him. Yeah, look, he's surrounded with great playmakers. If Evan Engram stays healthy, Barkley, as we mentioned. So I think it's a great supporting cast if they can figure out this offense with Jason Garrett at the helm. And in time, I think it'll be good offense, and I like a lot of the pieces. Slayton in particular interests me if the price is right.
Yeah, of course, Sterling Shepard's there as well. Golden Tate, Evan Engram, can he stay healthy? Lisanne, will you draft Evan Engram at the right price this year? I mean, he has burned us with injuries. Will you take him this year?
I mean, at the right price, yes. Just to have diversity in my leagues, yes, but not a really strong desire. I just think there's going to be some real good tight end fun to have. And he's just so unreliable with the on the field, off the field injuries. That concerns me. He's either hit or miss, and it's too risky.
We heard some things before today. There are a lot of talk about potential trades and teams moving up. Of course, we've seen and heard a lot of smoke over the last few days. Jennifer, how do you feel? Do you think there's going to be a lot of movement here with trades, or it's going to be stagnant tonight?
I think it's going to be more stagnant. I think that's been this whole draft has been that, it's such a pain the way that they're doing this to figure it out. And I think we want to see trades. That's exciting. When everything's live, I think people get more panicky and they start doing things. But now everyone's kind of home and isolated. It's a little easier for them to stick to their plan, not freak out. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of trades going on here. I think it's going to be mostly straightforward.
I'm curious, Jeff, for where you have Daniel Jones at in your rankings right now.
Actually, slightly behind Joe Burrow at 17. The thing about Jones, we've already seen the ceiling is enormous, but the consistency is not necessarily there. Beyond that, I'm not sold that there's the complete package surrounding him just yet. He really doesn't have a true X receiver. I mean, when you're talking, you have a bunch of slot guys and then a speed guy who can get downfield. You have Saquon, of course. And let's be clear, too, that there was trade rumors with Evan Engram as well. So that could still potentially happen. I'd be very surprised to let go of a tight end that young. but you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, so we never know. It could happen. If there's smoke, there's potentially fire. But Daniel Jones, I always say I like to look for those upside guys in the late rounds of fantasy drafts in one quarterback leagues. He is certainly one of those guys this year.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Are you a little bit higher on him, Bob, compared to his ranking?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, just slightly. I didn't hear the number. I froze up for a second, so I didn't
17.
hear Jeff's number.
17.
Yeah, I'm slightly higher. I'm more in the Burrow range, 14, 15 range with him. But, I mean, at that point, you're getting a quarterback, too. If I'm getting him in the double-digit rounds and maybe I get somebody ahead of him that, I feel like is a steady, locked-in guy, that, if I'm drafting maybe rounds 10 and 11, my quarterbacks, if one of those two is Daniel Jones, and maybe I reach a little bit for Jones to make sure I get him and then get a steadier guy behind him.
Yeah, and it's certainly possible. And the Giants go with a safety, Xavier McKinney, out of Alabama.
Wow.
Nice value.
Yeah.
In some mocks, we saw him projected to go in the first round. Most of the Giants here. Thoughts on that pick for the Giants, Jeff?
Well, they still have a hole to fill since the departure of Landon Collins. I think this certainly makes up for it. You can see some similarities between those two players playing close to the line of scrimmage. So makes a lot of sense when you have to face a team like Philadelphia as well, who does a lot of their damage close to the line of scrimmage, short and intermediate areas of the field. That's going to help them. I don't know if anything's going to help anybody against the wide receivers that Dallas is going to be throwing out on the field, but this pick makes a lot of sense. You address a position of need, you get a value. Gettleman, I kind of think he's 2 for 2 so far. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I
keep thinking of the whole Brandon Beane thing, where he just said he's gaslighting all of you people. You're nuts if you think he's an idiot.
You think Twitter was fun before. You better look out, Jeff Ratcliffe.
We have the Patriots on the clock now. They traded out of the first round yesterday. Have a ton of picks. Bob, what do you think the plan is for the Patriots this year? Is this a rebuild? What is Bill Belichick doing here?
This pick will tell us a lot. If it's Cole Kmet, it's just business as usual, right? I mean, going for the need. Look, they have the most draft capital of anybody. I think this is the most draft capital anyone's had in the final, over the course of 2 rounds. What do they have? They have the most capital remaining in the final 6 rounds of a draft of any team in the NFL, and I think the most in a number of years. So, look, they're going to do a lot of things and maybe even move down more and collect more picks. Would put it outside the possibility. I'd love to see them go quarterback or do something exciting or interesting. I just don't know that they will.
Lee-Sam, what do you think of Bill Belichick's setup compared to a lot of the other coaches?
Oh my gosh, the fact that his dog is sitting there right now in his desk making me so happy. That is probably the most human thing he's ever done. Because people that never look at him the same. I found a soft spot. Listen, yes, there's that. Okay, everyone's expecting this to be a rebuild, but I just don't see Belichick as the type of man to just throw in the towel. It is never surrender. And I think no matter what, they're going to make it work. They're going to be in for over 10 wins for the season. This is how he operates. So I don't think much changes, even though a ton has changed. But man, that dog was beautiful.
It's not exciting.
And the Patriots,
the dog might have made the pick.
Kyle Duggar, safety.
It's not exciting.
I don't think that's where people expected the Patriots were going, right?
Not me.
No.
What do you make of this pick, Jeff? Anything? What do you think the Patriots do this year?
I mean, this is a Belichick pick. You're talking this is a D2 guy. He's from Lenore Rhine. So this is a Belichick pick. But I tell you what, I actually have him number 45 on my board. So he's got a second-round grade, essentially. We know, the Duron Harmons of the world. He's done this before. It's Belichick putting his signature on another pick. They have a lot to do here. I did put a little question out about a half hour before tonight's action started. And I said the craziest thing that'll happen on day 2 of the draft is blank. And a surprising amount of people responded with the Patriots trading for Aaron Rodgers. That certainly blows this entire
not over yet, Jeff.
Something like that happens.
If this happens, not that I think it will.
I believe the dog did make this pick, though.
I think the dog did. Right?
I think he put the dog there just in case he didn't like the pick.
He's like, whatever you want to do, I can make it work.
I didn't see Bill anywhere, so I think the dog did make the pick.
It seems like a pick where he was out there working this kid out in the rain, like you saw the photos.
Remember
5
that
minutes before the virus lockdown happened.
Yes.
He was grinding on something at the last minute.
Yes.
Panthers are on the clock.
Panthers pick is in. All right.
Is in, and they select Gross Matos, the defensive end from Penn State. There's been some talk they could take a running back. I didn't see that. Bob, how do you feel the fit here with Carolina for Matos?
Look, I'm fine. They needed help across the defensive front all along. The edge rusher, they got some disruptive help in the middle, obviously, with Derek Brown. I think that's a huge play. And he's a versatile player. He can move around the line. This is a good pick for them. This absolutely solidifies a need.
Jeff, where did you have him on your board? You did mention him near the top, so I'm assuming you think this is a good pick for Carolina.
Yeah, I actually had him mocked to Seattle at 27, so I thought he was a first-round talent for sure. It's going to be pretty interesting with Carolina just in general, how they reposition themselves in the Matt Rule era. And we actually heard some rumblings today about Curtis Samuel, a lot of teams inquiring about his services. I would expect that maybe a player or two does get moved, whether it's today or tomorrow, because it just seems like that type of thing. Doesn't it seem like a quarantine thing to do? You get a little bored. All right, let me see what kind of trade I can make. So he's one of those names, though, in a different offense, could be pretty interesting.
I'll just say this is one of those reports, though, where it's the Panthers are taking calls. We're hearing from the Panthers. We're not hearing from the people making the calls, and that's always a bit of a sign that, hey, a little thirsty here. Help me out.
Jennifer, Dolphins on the clock. Do you think they go running back? I know they like Jonathan Taylor a lot.
I think they should. Let's do it. Let's get some excitement. Jonathan Taylor in Miami.
Right. Are we totally just, Jeff, dismissing you guys? Any of you think totally dismissing Jordan Howard, who's been, relatively effective when healthy?
No, he's not been effective. He hasn't been effective since his rookie season. He had volume, but he has not been effective. He's been one of the most disappointing running backs, overhyped. He's what I call a love to love. Fantasy players, no matter what he does, they will love him. He's the antithesis of Cam Newton, the antithesis of Mike Evans, who are love to hates. No matter what they do, people hate them. Jordan Howard, I don't know why they do the Jim Carrey, Dumb and Dumber, la, 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 la. I can't hear you what you're saying. He's all good, and he has not been, unfortunately. So I think that they need somebody in there. Jordan Howard is toast at this point. Sorry, Jordan, if you're watching.
It's okay. Everybody else likes him, so he's fine.
I was surprised they signed him. I didn't get it.
I did at the time. I mean, Patrick Laird, Myles Gaskin, Kalen Ballage, what was there?
Well, I mean, they would address it in the draft with all their picks.
Still have the we'll see if it is. Tell us.
Yeah, it's not.
Jonathan Taylor would be a good fit because he's so fast. I mean, that running track in school, really that effectiveness, that speed, something Miami hasn't had from a back in a while.
And he carries the Die Hard's karma with him after visiting the Football Die Hard show, a joyous young lad.
Oh.
I'm rooting.
Plus, he's been in Wisconsin for a while now, guys. He deserves some sunshine. Let's send him to Miami.
True that.
Right?
Another
little South Beach action.
Oh, Bob, what's up with the restraining order? I'm so curious.
Oh, there was Melvin Gordon chatter last night. Perhaps I have overly enthusiastic. Perhaps.
Yeah, there was some lotion visible on the screen.
Oh,
okay. I'll send you. Remember, I met Melvin Gordon.
I know. I was just saying he's pretty jacked, more so than you would expect. Yes.
You probably let Lisa Ann a little closer up than he'll let you. So
I was right there, man. I was right there.
I will say he's a lot taller than, I knew his height, but just the way he carries himself, and the height with the hair, and he's so big, you're like, he's massive. Massive.
If the Dolphins don't go running back here, what other positions do you think they'll address? Probably on the defensive side?
I think so.
Yeah, they got their O-line now.
Inside defensive line, safety.
They got the quarterback.
While we're waiting, I must bring this up, mainly Adam. I'm really excited about the peripheral vision of CeeDee Lamb. The way he was able to grab that phone out of his girl's hand was so impressive to me. As a Dallas Cowboys fan, man, I felt so good about that. I was like, look at that. He didn't even flinch. Whoosh. Would you be like that if your phone was ringing? A girl trying to take care of your head?
Probably wouldn't even have that phone where he had it. It would have been hidden. But he did tweet today that everyone was making too much of it.
Okay, she tweeted last night from her account that at that time had like 1,100 followers, which I wrote down, and now she's raked in the followers. But she said his agent was calling on FaceTime and she wanted to get it. But listen, she shouldn't have touched his phone. The agent can wait because the agent is also watching what's going on. But it was just the fact that she was sitting on the couch and looked like she had absolutely no clothes on as well because of how the couch was angled. And then watching the mom, I watched that video like probably 20 times. The mom just looking out of the corner of her eye with such pride of his peripheral vision. Go Dallas Cowboys. I feel good about CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I thought Isaiah Simmons' party was pretty fun. I wish I was at that one if you remember the scenery there. So that was.
I'm heading for Vrabel's first chance I get.
Well, thanks for the update there, Bob.
Listen, I just want to be
a break.
On Cliff
I'd like to take
Kingsbury's
Melvin Gordon
couch.
with me, but.
Oh my God, Bob, this is out of control. Whoa, Bob.
Kingsbury's setup was insane.
That was a little too sexy
that
for
one
me.
That was just everything. I'm just so sleek. Everything, the fire pit outside.
Yeah,
so Arizona. I loved it.
Makes me want to move to Scottsdale. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful there.
Tyrann Matthews tweet. No wonder they couldn't afford me anymore.
Yeah.
That was funny.
A lot of the NFL players were tweeting about that setup. They were envious. I mean, how often do you see the NFL players envious of a coach's setup?
Not that I'm a crazy real estate person, but have you ever looked at the price of real estate in Scottsdale? It's like literally I could get a mansion for what I was paying in New York for my place.
I'm waiting to see McVay's setup. He's got to come a little more correct now. Sean McVay, I think, is going to be forced to up his game a little bit.
Yeah, but LA real estate is 4 times.
Yep.
Arizona is. For him to get a yard that sprawls like that with the guest cabana in the back area,
But $1 million will go a lot further in Arizona than it will in Malibu.
All right, this pick seems like it's taking a while. I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if they're.
All right, it's in. It says.
But Jeff, with Tua this year, how much do you think he plays, and how much if he does?
Oh, I do. You're not going to pick a guy at 5 and bench him for the whole season, or have him ride the pine the whole season. I actually have him projected coming in week 4. Fitzpatrick has had a really impressive staying power in the league. He continues to start. He continues to produce. It's kind of a shame that we won't get to see another year of him because I like using him for fantasy just because I'm a Fitzpatrick guy. But yeah, he's going to get on the field pretty quickly.
We have a trade, folks. The Browns and Colts have traded behind the Dolphins and Texans at number 41.
Yeah, Robert Hunt is the pick for Miami, a guard from Louisiana. So they address
the offensive line help necessary too.
Yeah, and again, they probably see it as they can, if they do want a running back, that they can get someone later.
Or they're Jordan Howard truthers.
True that.
They're feeling good. Well, I mean, the Dolphins do pick again 24th.
Plenty of depth.
Do you have any details on that trade?
I'm still looking right now. Just the Browns and Colts have traded behind the Dolphins and Texans at number 41. The Colts are now on the clock, is what I'm hearing.
Colts are on the clock.
All right, so the Colts took
the Texans pick is in. The Colts are on the clock.
Okay.
What do they want? Some defense?
One. Where does Houston go with this pick, guys?
Hunter.
I would think on the defensive side.
What's the craziest thing that O'Brien could do? What could be the most ridiculous? They're going to draft a kicker. They're going to.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with like James Bondy
and seller.
Villainry kind of theories here. I can't.
Sure.
The pick is already in.
I'll tell you what, Houston always drafts tight ends.
And they never really work out. They never really work out.
They do. Yeah, they're probably getting a tight end, but maybe
they also never get rid of them.
Unless they have to cut them because they do something at the draft last year.
Yes, and then they go on to the Jets and do great things.
Yeah, so I would think it could be defense here for the Texans. And what do you guys think the Colts are moved up for here, making this trade? Well, who could they be eyeing? Any idea?
Jonathan Taylor?
Maybe.
That would be interesting because you got to think.
Could it be a quarterback?
Once they saw Miami didn't take him, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Is Jacksonville on the running back market? We've heard these trade rumors of Leonard Fournette. Do you think Jacksonville addresses running back in this draft at all?
I mean, last year they did take Raquel Armstead out of Temple University.
I said Ross Blacklock. Sorry.
And they did.
Yes, Houston takes Blacklock.
For Houston, okay.
That's a solid pick, though.
Yeah,
Right.
They needed that. They absolutely needed that.
So now we do have the Colts on the clock after making that trade. So they traded up. So going to be interesting to see what they traded up for. And, I mean, could it be running back? I mean, Marlon Mack is there. Do you think they would trade up for a running back right now?
I certainly do. Marlon Mack really isn't a complete running back, unfortunately. And it's weird because he was using the passing game at the college level. They just don't trust him there. They're using Nyheim Hines. Mack, he's just a Mack kind of guy. I don't know. I don't see a lot of juice with him. And we do at PFF, we do have running back as one of their major needs, and we actually happen to have Jonathan Taylor on our list as the top guy who they could select.
Bob, you think it's a running back here for the Colts?
No. But I mean, maybe it's a little. Look, I'm not a big Marlon Mack guy. I rarely draft him, but I do think that you look at current ADPs, pretty fairly priced. Maybe for some of the reasons Jeff outlined. I mean, it's not a sexy pick, but when he is healthy, it's a great offensive line, and he gets plenty of opportunities. And I kind of like that if the price is right. So I'd kind of rather not see him draft somebody because I don't know if that somebody will play a true lead role.
But who could they be coveting enough that they would bother to trade up? I mean, it does. Running back does seem to make sense as far as why they would panic, make this trade.
Quarterback is what we see trade ups for, said the Green Bay Packers.
Well, you think they're taking Jalen Hurts?
I don't know. They've got a need. If they decided Jacoby Brissett is already, maybe they've already made their decision on him. We know Phillip Rivers is a short-term answer. So, at some point they do need to address the position in the long term. And if you listen to the Packers, that time is now, like 5 years before you need them.
Lisa Ann, how are you feeling about T.Y. Hilton
5 years before
for the Colts?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned of 1 year older, being a little banged up here and there, slowing down a bit. And again, 1 year older and limited workouts for players that don't have incredible gyms in their homes, especially players that are aging. Getting out of rhythm is a big thing. And T.Y. Hilton is one that probably worked out regularly all off season and on. And I think this downtime can be one or two things for all players.
Jonathan Taylor.
They can get lazy. Jonathan
you nailed
Taylor.
it.
They
Ratcliffe
do trade
nailed
up. Bob,
Good
what do you think
call.
about the fit, and what do you think about his prospects for this season?
Well, I think look, he's got we've seen great production from him throughout his career at Wisconsin. What is Wisconsin known for? Great offensive lines. What are the Colts known for right now? Great offensive line. I mean, I'm not going to complain about this, and I think he moves up pretty high, and I'm just interested to see what this does for Marlon Mack. It's not good news for Mack dynasty owners right now. Redrafters, take a pass.
Jeff, your take here. Jonathan Taylor to the Colts. What does it do for him and Marlon Mack?
R.I.P. Marlon Mack fantasy. That's over. But this is a great spot for Jonathan Taylor. Not necessarily true three-down back, but was used a little bit more in the passing game. He's not a prototype Wisconsin back. I know people are just going to, box score scout and say that that's what he is. Super dynamic and carry the load. That's the one question, though, for Dynasty you have to ask. How willing are you to invest in a guy who's had over 900 carries in the last 3 years? But for 2020, I like it.
Yeah, a couple 2,000-yard seasons in that mix, right? So, I mean,
early look. What round do you think he should go in of fantasy drafts? And obviously, we'll see some drafts this weekend.
For me, it's probably going to be late third, early fourth is where he's coming off the board, given just how many running backs come off the board. And there's going to be a hype train eventually. I don't know if it'll be for Taylor. The Edwards-Helaire has already started. But if it does happen, that'll drive his price up. I think, fair market value, probably mid-fourth, but it'll probably be a little bit higher than that.
I was like a solid running back, too, coming in right there.
Yeah, and I've already seen him go in a couple of drafts I've been doing, third, fourth round, and that was people anticipating a good landing spot for him. And there's slow drafts going on now. People might get lucky and be in a good spot to take a guy on the clock. I was in a slow draft last night, and Hilaire went 2 picks before me. I was hoping that it would come to me. It didn't. It was round 5.
So I guess that's the question for all you guys. Is that does Edwards-Hilaire still remain ahead of Taylor at this point then?
I think he does. Unfortunately, I wanted to find a reason, just the contrarian in me, to possibly bump him out of there, but I don't think there's enough juice here, and especially given the presence of Nyheim Hines. If there wasn't a pass-catching back, I'd probably be in a different spot, but it does look like he'll be relegated to more of that 2-down role, which it's really hard. As Derrick Henry showed, you can do it. You can be an RB1 with just a 2-down role, but it is really freaking hard. You have to be a 300-carry guy, and I don't think Taylor's going to be that.
Yeah, and you have to score double-digit touchdowns, as Derrick Henry has shown, and obviously very little margin for error, especially in PPR formats. Jennifer, you've been pretty good at predicting some of these picks, so where's Jacksonville going here?
Jacksonville is going Grant Delpit.
Okay. Yeah, Jacksonville, another team that's addressed the defense so far, a couple defensive picks in the first couple rounds, and could see them maybe a defensive line, offensive lineman as well. Could they go tight end? Could Jacksonville go tight end here?
I don't know. God, Eifert, who needs a tight end when you have tight end? My bad. I'm going to use the broken clock theory here, and I'm just going to say everybody's picking a quarterback until somebody does.
Well, at some point. Maybe not on the line. We might not land there at that point.
The broken clock theory. It took me a second.
I love
it.
Jeff, where should Jacksonville go here, in your opinion?
I do think safety makes sense. So somebody like Delpit could certainly be in play. They've sort of had some misses at safety over the years. They keep going back to somebody like Jonathan Cyprien, who never really panned out to what they had hoped he was going to be. And let's face it, Jacksonville on the defensive side of the ball is not the same defense that it was just 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of players gone. So that would certainly help them out. How
quickly things change in the NFL. That team almost beat New England to get to the Super Bowl.
With Blake Bortles.
Look how quickly things change in the NFL. It's amazing. That's why all these people, we got there, we'll get there next year. It doesn't work like that. I mean, unless you're New England, obviously things have changed there. But it's crazy the turnaround that Jacksonville has had from where they were. I mean, they had the lead against New England. I think we all kind of knew New England would come back. But where Jacksonville is now, guys don't seem to want to be there. I mean, you saw the reaction of Henderson yesterday when he was drafted. It's crazy what's happened to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Right, it really is. Yeah, life does come at you fast according to the entire last month. Not just the NFL.
It's been more than, what has it been, like 6 weeks now?
It seems like only yesterday.
Yeah. And I'm not allowed to talk about life without baseball, right? This is a football-only podcast.
Yeah, that's for a live.
I'm going to need to talk about that later.
We got people
whole thing is so sad.
That don't like baseball, I think.
I mean, I'm going to say the same thing about life without basketball. You know, it took me till now to realize that I don't know a lot of current TV programs unless they're streaming and people talk about them. You know why? Because at night I just have games on. So, you know, like I have barely seen any of Modern Family because like all of these things were on during prime time. You have a game on the background. You're doing some stuff on your computer. I've been faced with this whole like, what's on regular television? I stay in the sports package area. Now I'm like drifting around and I'm like, what is out here? I don't know what any of these channels are. You know, it's bizarre.
People are like, how have you not seen this? I'm like, don't you guys watch sports? It's on all the time. I mean, they're like,
what's baseball, basketball?
There's something on. They're on my computer, reading around, watching sports. Like, I'm not sitting around binge watching Game of Thrones, but now I probably should, right? That's supposed to be a good one.
It is.
I heard that's a good show.
It's good.
People like that show. I did not watch an episode.
I heard people like it.
So,
it's good. So I guess Bob has seen it. Jeff has seen it, and me. It was good.
Yes, it was suitable.
Fantasy league.
I have to thank Lisa Ann for the whole Tiger King thing. I probably never would have known what it was until.
Dude, fall in, like lean into this trash right now. It'll make you feel so much better about what we're going through right now. Like it was just fascinating trash. I watched the whole series in one night. Wow.
You look at the Colts. I mean, just looking at the tweet. If you look at the Colts draft, just call it this: DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. That's a pretty good draft, right?
Pretty solid.
Wow.
With no first-round picks.
Yeah, right.
Forrest Buckner is your first-round pick. I mean, that's solid.
Yeah.
I'd take that any day of the week.
Exactly.
Definitely. Colts doing a good job so far. Jacksonville is on the clock. Their pick is in, and they have selected LaVisca Chenault.
Wow.
Ooh. This boy at the combine, I will tell you, he walked by. I had this reaction with two players. Who the F is that dude? And it was Chenault and Rager, because they are both absolutely jacked. At PFF, Mike Renner comped LaVisca Chenault to Saquon Barkley. And the reason why he did it is not saying that he's a good running back. It's just because he's a physical specimen. He's not going to do much downfield for you, but in the short and intermediate, you got that. This is a nice compliment here to DJ Chark. Pretty solid pick.
Right, and they don't have anyone under contract except Chark beyond this year, right? I mean, whether it's Conley, Cole, etc. I mean, everyone's on 1 year, and that's it. And none of them are going to make a hell of a lot of money.
How about for fantasy this year? Is there any value with him for this year?
I think we ultimately have to tie it back to Gardner Minshew and how he develops as a year two guy. What I liked about Gardner Minshew, now there were times where the throws weren't necessarily on point, but he was throwing with a lot of anticipation last year. He didn't have to throw a guy. He didn't have to wait till the guy was open. He would throw them open, which for young quarterbacks, that's not always a skill they come into the league having or ever develop for that matter. So that's encouraging. And when you think about him, not a huge arm, so you get a guy like Chenault to really dominate in the short and intermediate. Makes sense, but I don't think there's a lot of juice here. I think it's, DJ Chark for sure, and then Fournette, if he's still on the roster, are going to be our two primary guys.
Yep, I think that's it. And Tyler Eifert, of course.
Yeah,
of course. Do not
wait a minute. Wait, I'm getting something. Tyler Eifert just hurt, as Bob was saying.
Where do you see DJ Chark?
Another 16th round pick out the window for me.
Where would you take DJ Chark this year, Jeff? What range do you have him in right now?
I think anywhere from, about 22 to 28 range for me is fair market. The touchdown production was off the charts last year. We did ultimately see regression. Now, part of it was when Nick Foles came back under center, but still, he was producing at too high of a rate. That being said, he has that ceiling, and he is the guy at this point. So I think, back-end wide receiver 2 or fringe wide receiver 2 is perfectly fair.
Right. What if you go running back heavy? Could you live with him as a wide receiver 1?
Might be pushing it because of the inconsistencies. I don't think the floor is high enough for me to do that. But if he is my second guy, like say I went running back, wide receiver, running back, or something to that effect, I'd feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think if you open with 2 running backs, you're probably going to be in a position to get a receiver you like better than Chark anyway.
Absolutely.
From the drafts that I've seen so far and done, a lot of people are going with the running backs early, and a lot of receivers are falling, and there's good depth at that position. So I think in that scenario, you might be able to get Chark as your 2 if you do like him. We do have the Bears on the clock right now. What are some needs for them, Bob, in your opinion?
Definitely quarterback. No.
I should have asked you. I should have known that was coming.
That's true.
I couldn't let it go. I have the restraining order, so I can't talk about Gordon anymore. So it has to be something. Look, interior offensive line help would be nice here. They need secondary help as well. I think it's going to be a non-sexy, non-fantasy pick.
Yeah, it seems like that's going to be the case.
I fear for Dallas they might take Christian Fulton, though I don't know why he keeps falling. Do you know why, Jeff?
That I'm not sure about. I thought he could have been as early as a mid-first round pick.
Yeah.
I think this would be pretty cool if they took Antoine Winfield Jr. His father played for a rival team. That would be interesting. Right guard is in need. Cornerback is in need, of course. So, yeah, really addressing that secondary is probably the likely move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the pick is in, so we'll see who the Bears take to improve their team right now. And it looks like the pick is waiting for that pick to come in.
Just teasing us a little bit.
Roger must be saying something crazy. Maybe he's
Wash your hands.
I heard.
Tight end.
Colt
They took the tight end.
Wow.
Guys,
Nathan
Cowboys
Trubisky
fans.
Wow.
He could still get Christian Fulton.
Okay.
Possible.
Right.
Quick thoughts on that, Jeff, before we get out of here?
They like taking tight ends. They're another team, so there you go. I'm surprised. I think Adam Troutman is the best tight end in this class. Cole Kmet had a pretty rapid rise here. I get it. He's got some similarities with Austin Hooper, but, I'm not in love with this pick.
Bill Belichick's dog wept.
Well, stay tuned. Coming up next, Howard Bender and Brad Evans will be back at 9 o'clock, some of us, and stay here for continued coverage. We'll be back soon.
SiriusXM app. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back in. It's the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio live stream coverage of the NFL Draft, powered by Fantasy Alarm. I'm Howard Bender. With me here, you see it, one-on-one, Brad Evans, Mr. Fade the Noise at Noisy Huevos. Well, I got to tell you something, Brad. I needed a little quality one-on-one time with you, and I think I picked the perfect night for that here, because the way that this second round started, I was like, I mean, forget it. I was bonkers, but when I heard you on SiriusXM at the Patriots pick of Kyle Duggar, I laughed my ass off, only because I saw a picture of they showed Belichick's war room, and there was a dog sitting in his chair, and I'm like, Did the dog hit the computer? Are we going to get a rollback here of a pick? What's going on?
Oh, it was wild. I mean, we had Dumpgate with Mike Vrabel's kid, and he had some dude look like he was at a Tiger King and some other guy in a morph suit, which was hilarious. CeeDee Lamb's girl was trying to slide in on his burner phone to see what the DMs were all about. And at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was hang out with Cliff Kingsbury in his posh estate there. I would assume it's in Paradise Valley. I used to live in the Phoenix area. That's where all the la creme de la creme, the wealthy live. But man, that guy had the mountain backdrop. He had the in-ground fireplace outside, the nice lap pool, just lavish. I want to be self-quarantined with that cat. He had the setup.
Well, it was either his setup, Jerry Jones on the $250 million yacht where he was locked away. But I'll tell you what, where I wanted to be was Isaiah Wilson's living room there, because a fight was breaking out between him and his mom and his girlfriend.
Yeah, there was some stuff that was going down, brother. I think we got to get like 20, 48 hours. Somebody's got to do like a deep investigative report on the behind the scenes, what happened after the camera stopped rolling. I agree. There's got to be an expose of some sort. By the way, I just want to steal the podium for a minute, because I'm a Bears fan, Howard, and I am incensed right now. I'm beyond pissed off because Ryan Pace go to Ryan Pace. Like, here's my whole line of thinking here. So the Bears are picking at 43 overall. This is the first pick in the draft. This is, of course, involved from the Raiders trade with Khalil Mack, and the Bears didn't pick yesterday. So my entire hope for this bad boy, one of two players, take the best offensive lineman on the board, and you could have gone that way with Josh Jones, who's shockingly still there. Huge need for the Bears to solidify that line, give some added protection for Nick Foles or Trubisky and for Dave Montgomery. Or you go with safety, which is also a top need, and Antoine Winfield Jr. Great bloodlines. His dad was a fantastic player for the Minnesota Vikings in his heyday. That would have checked a box. So instead, what does Ryan Pace do? He decides, oh, you know what? We're going to go give Jimmy Graham $9 million guaranteed, and then we're going to just zig while other people's thinking we're going to zag in the NFL draft, and we're going to take Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. Kmet's a fine player, very talented kid, best tight end in this draft, but what the hell are you thinking? This is not a need. Fire Ryan Pace. He is drowning in idiocy right now, and it's showing its ugly head once again in this NFL draft.
Yeah, really just a complete head scratcher. And the funny thing is because I was looking at possibly the Patriots grabbing Cole Kmet as being a possible option there. Listen, none of the way this second round has started is anything that I thought. I thought Jonathan Taylor would have been a better fit in Detroit. I thought Swift was going to end up in Miami. I thought that was fine. I was on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon with you, thinking, come on, Colts, ride this sucker like a pony. How long does Phillip Rivers really have?
Or go to New England. I mean, what, Jared Stidham? Really, Belichick? This is what you're going to do? Are you really going to lose for Lawrence? Because apparently that must be the strategy right now. I mean, Jalen Hurts, to me, was the quintessential Belichick quarterback in the fact that he's got outstanding leadership characteristics. He's a guy that could change the dynamic and scheme of this entire offense in the post-Tom Brady era because of his multidimensionality. The guy is durable. He's highly accurate in the short to intermediate field, which is another huge area where the New England Patriots have always exploited the competition. I thought it was honestly going to be a windmill slam dunk at 37 that Hurts would go to Foxborough. But, they do have some additional selections tonight at 87, 98, 100. I don't think Hurts is going to last that long. I could see him winding up in Pittsburgh at this point, though the Steelers could entertain taking a running back. We've heard a lot of rumors and whispers. They want somebody to complement James Conner. But, yeah, there's been some interesting head-scratching moves. I would say the biggest winner so far from a fantasy perspective, Howard, and see if you disagree with me, is probably Michael Pittman, just because it's such a clear path to opportunity to earn the wide receiver 2 job opposite T.Y. Hilton, who hasn't exactly been the picture of perfect health. And if Hilton, God forbid, were to miss some games, you could be talking about Pittman being the best rookie wide receiver in this year's draft class. Though right now I have Justin Jefferson at number 1 among this year's first-year wideouts.
Yeah, if you're talking about landing spots from fantasy purposes, I like Jefferson's spot there. I don't mind Rieger's spot in Philadelphia. I think, as long as they don't pigeonhole him into the return game as well. T. Higgins and Cincy, I was like, yeah, not really the pick I would have made there. So I like Jefferson there. And yeah, I do think that Pittman is in a great spot. I mean, who's going to beat him out? Paris Campbell? No. Well, you are a Bears fan, so your ex tight end Trey Burton. He's now lapping in the luxury of the Colts. So very strange there. What we're seeing right now here after the Cole Kmet pick, back-to-back safeties. Grant Delpit goes to from LSU to the Browns. Antoine Winfield, there he is in Tampa Bay.
Oh, good Lord! I'm incensed. I'm pissed. I am surprised the Buccaneers didn't go running back there, to be honest with you. J.K. Dobbins seems to be slipping right now, and I don't really understand it. Dobbins would have been a perfect pass-catching running back that they were looking for this franchise. I don't see Ronald Jones being the primary carrier entering week 1, but maybe Tampa's going to take somebody at 76. Cam Akers is still out there, though he had a case of the dropsies as a member of the Florida State Seminoles, but yeah, Antoine Winfield, there's my Bears pick. A smart, sagacious franchise using their wit, using their intelligence, just using one functional brain cell. That's all it takes, Ryan Pace, and making the right decision and a cogent one. Love the pick by Tampa, and I'm bitter. And this is, Howard, this is why I drink, and why I drink heavily pretty much every day.
Tequila becomes everybody's best friend when it comes to a draft like this. You said J.K. Dobbins is falling. Do the Falcons take a look at that? Like, I know that they picked up Gurley on this deal, but with the arthritic knee, I mean, who's behind him? Ito Smith, Brian Hill, both those guys suck. I'm sorry, I can't put it in a nicer way.
No, you're spot on. I think suck certainly applies. They're appropriate adjectives to those two players. Brian Hill had like one huge week, and then the next week defense is adjusted, and he was just a guy in the end. But you look at Atlanta, yeah, it would be a really good fit for the Falcons here at 47. We're 2 picks away with Denver on the clock. I would love to see it. Todd Gurley, to me, is going to be a colossal bust this year. People are going to buy into, look at all the touchdowns he scored last year, and he's going to be set up nicely with the Falcons and a rebuilt offensive line. They looked really good last season. Matt Ryan there. You got all these field stretchers with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. They added a Hayden Hurst this offseason as well. But I don't know, man. I don't buy that Todd Gurley is anywhere close to the player that he was. You saw his yak numbers drop off precipitously last year. That's a bad sign. The lateral agility is not really there anymore. He's straight north-south. He cannot get side to side with that electricity and spark that we saw even a couple of years ago, as you mentioned, because of the arthritic knee. So I think getting a complimentary rusher like a J.K. Dobbins makes a boatload of sense in this instance. And if I had, picked my poison between the two, I would take Dobbins over Gurley in redraft leagues this year.
Yeah, I would do it as well. We're going to wait to see. Let me ask you about the this receiving core right now. What do you think? Cortland Sutton, tandem, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. Like, they're just, boom, revamped their entire wide receiver core. Bye-bye, Deshaun Hamilton. I don't know who Tim Patrick is anymore. Denver really, like, John Elway was like, I spent all this time trying to draft myself. I found something pretty close in Drew Lock, I think. Now let's give him all the weapons that he could possibly use.
This is, putting him in a situation where he can succeed. And Elway has screwed this up so many times. I live in Denver. Can't you tell, Howard? I've got a beautiful mountain backdrop. There are Yetis up there, so be careful, America. But, Elway has screwed this thing up so many times. We hear it constantly here on local sports talk radio. Sometimes I participate in the derision of one, John Elway. But I think Drew Lock is the answer. He showed flashes last season in 5 games. I loved Cortland Sutton coming out of college a couple of years ago at SMU. He was my number 1 in that draft class at the position. He lived up to that top billing last year. As you mentioned, you look at Jerry Jeudy, the most polished route runner in this draft, in my opinion, to complement and flank Sutton. And now you get a guy in KJ Hamler. And the Hamburglar is, kind of similar to McDonald's version, right? He's sneaky. he's deft. He's a guy that gets underneath, and you don't really see where he's at, and all of a sudden he pops up and he takes it to the house. So he's a gadgety guy. Some people have compared him to Tavon Austin. I hope he has a better career than Tavon Austin, but he fits exactly what this team needs. Now, Jeudy ran in the slot a ton last season, Alabama, and I think they're going to try to work him outside and Hamler be that Curtis Samuel version, if you will, for this team. It's looking extra spicy, and I'm going to throw this out at you, Howard. This is a real prop bet right now, available on PointsBet. Drew Lock, 19.5 passing touchdowns, over or under.
Oh, I'll take the over on that. Absolutely. Absolutely. You got a pass catching back in Melvin Gordon. You've got a pass catching back in Phillip Lindsay. And now you just revamped the entire wide receiver core. Oh, yeah. Noah Fant. Did we see what this guy did at the tail end of last season? I'll take that over easily.
And Noah Fant tracked extraordinarily well in one category that we all love in fantasy, and that's yak. He had the highest yak per reception of any tight end in the NFL last year. He had some concentration issues. He's a little bit of a liability in terms of being a pass blocker, but you're right. I mean, the guy's got the skills to pay the bills. What this team boils down to for everybody to live to expectations is just Drew Lock. Can he take that next step in maturation? He's got the protection. He's got the ground game that you mentioned, and now he has a full arsenal of dynamite weapons. And I'm really loving what the Denver Broncos have done here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun in the Mile High City this fall.
Oh, I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And now I'm kind of interested here as we wait for Atlanta's pick to come in. My Jets, I'm hoping that I was hoping they'd go wide receiver. KJ Hamler was a guy who I really liked for them, although they do have Crowder working out of the slot a ton. So now, why is Denzel Mims falling so much? And does Mims fall into the Jets' lap here at the 48th pick?
Yeah, I think at this juncture, even though that Mims is very much an unpolished product, he's unrefined, he's got some work to do. I mean, you just look at the freakish athleticism at 6'3", 207 pounds, 4.38, 40-yard speed. Here's my scouting report. I'll just read it to you after doing some film work on him. Freakish athleticism and physicality, toughness, route diversity, catch radius of a mythical bird, red zone threat, and has high point victories galore. The downside, unpolished in his breaks, will need to develop a little bit more suddenness and sharpness in his overall route tree. Had 11 drops on 66 catchable passes last season at Baylor, according to Pro Football Focus. But at this point, if you're looking for a guy that, maybe develops into a Brandon Marshall type, maybe develops into a Braylon Edwards, maybe develops into a DK Metcalf immediately, I think this would be a very smart investment for the New York Jets. And I tell you what, Howard, if they get Mims, you got Becton, I believe, in the first round. Mm-hmm. You got to be feeling a little fancy in your pants right now with those two selections.
Oh, you saw me last night on the live stream. I was weeping like a little baby that they were smart enough to take Becton with that first pick. I want them to go wide receiver here. I do think that it's just a good place to start given the depth of this wide receiver class. I thought there'd be more running backs off the board even right by now. But I mean, I'm pretty happy. I'd be pretty happy with Mims as the guy to go for if he lasts. I mean, I can't see the Falcons taking him. That's not going to be the way that's going to happen.
Is Jerry Jones running that franchise as well? Because if he is, then they're going wide receiver.
Man.
I think for right now, Atlanta's got to be taking J.K. Dobbins. They could go defense though. That's the other option that they have. That's obviously a need. And there's a pretty good amount of running backs left. Cam Akers is there. I know a lot of people are down on Zach Moss, but I still like the guy. He led every running back at the FBS level in total yak with Utah. His knee checked out well. He did not have, great measurements or, metrics during the combine. He only ran a 4.65 40-yard dash, but he wasn't healthy either. He went at 100%. He went out there, tried to give it his all, and underwhelmed. But you look at the game film, man, he was getting the job done. And granted, it's the Pac-12, and people are going to discount a running back from the Pac-12, but he's a player that's got a 3-down skill set and could be a nice little coup, though I don't think we're going to hear his name called in round 2 today. But Atlanta's pick is in.
Marlin Davidson.
And it's Marlin Davidson. Interesting. So no J.K. Dobbins. So they did go defense.
They did go defense. The edge rusher out of Iowa, Epinesa.
Yeah.
Where's he? Here's another dude who's falling.
Yeah, that's the guy that I had mocked. I've got my mock from last night here. I had A.J. Epinesa going to Baltimore at 28. So he's still on the board right now. I mean, look, all these GMs, all these scouts, they have their particular fetishes. We don't know what their draft board is. We don't know the interview process. All we know is based on the tape that we've seen.
Jets traded out. Sorry. Jets traded out. I just saw a change there. I don't know what's going on. Somebody get me Adam Schefter on the phone here. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
it's the Seahawks on the clock.
Yeah.
And the pick is in. Ooh.
I haven't seen an update yet as to what this is, but
well, the Seahawks were at 64 and also at 59. So I wonder if the Jets just moved back a handful of spots to that 59 position. This is going to be interesting.
They did. They moved back to the 59. I don't know what else was there.
59 and the 101st. Interesting.
Well,
we'll see what Seattle does here. I think the Seahawks, yesterday they went Jordan Brooks. I could see Josh Jones here. Josh Jones should not be available right now. They need the offensive line upgrade. This is a team that rated pretty low in run blocking efficiency and pass blocking efficiency. 30 in PBE last year, according to PFF, and 20 in RBE. That's an upgrade. It's an area of need. I had him taking Isaiah Wilson in round 1. So if they don't go Josh Jones, and they're spicy for someone else that I'm not thinking of.
And that kind of surprised me. You bring up Josh Jones, was another guy who I mentioned today. Is that a Team Huevos shirt? Wait, let me see that shirt there.
It is a Team Huevos shirt, amigo.
¿Dónde está mi camisa?
I've got an entire line of Huevos shirts, so I'm happy to decorate your Huevos anytime, Howard.
Oh, you can definitely decorate my Huevos. CCC, Poppy. Josh James, I kind of had him pegged here in round 2, looking at the Texans as the possibility here. Why are the Texans going defensive tackle when clearly their biggest issue has been the offensive line for at least the last 3 years?
Hashtag fire Bill O'Brien. And the Seahawks go Darrell Taylor, defensive end out of Tennessee. So they don't even address the offensive line. What is going on with Jones? Did he go like Laramie Tunsil with the gas mask? Like, did I miss something?
I have no idea. By the way, all those gas masks at the Tunsil house this Christmas, dude signed a 3-year, $66 million extension today.
Yeah, and you know what? Kind of handy in these times that we're living in as well. So I guess, he was ahead of the curve, you could say, was Laramie Tunsil. We're trying to flatten it, Howard. We're trying to flatten it.
Well, it depends on which curve you're flattening, That's what I'm saying. Huevos has his tequila. Those of us, listen, you're in Denver. Come on, free love, free tree. Let's go.
I know all about the Sour Diesel, the Blue Bonnet Chronic, to quote the great Snoop Dogg. My dream, Howard, to be honest with you, is to just go to a Willie Nelson show, somehow find my way to Willie's bus after the show, and Snoop just happens to be there with Martha Stewart making cookies.
Ooh, that's not bad. But I can actually one-up you because I was with Ice Cube and his son hanging out at a Coachella after party.
Oh.
And who was there with us but Mel B, who smelled like caramels.
Oh, really? That's a hell of a story. You talk about a fly on the wall to lead off our little segment. That's where I wanted to be a fly at that moment in time.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we flatten the curve and fish tours and I'm sitting there at Dick's Sporting Goods Arena on Labor Day, I'm going to bring you out to a fish show. I'm going to tell you the story in full.
Oh, yeah, because there's all kinds of gory details that you're leaving on the cutting room floor that I must hear. And then we will partake in certain legal substances, because that's what it is here in my wonderful state. I have a whole collection of gummies, which is a kind of a rite of passage when you live in Denver. It's just like, here's your driver's license, sir, and here's some 2-to-1 THC to CBD. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. All right, Steelers pick is in. Where are they going? Go ahead. Make a wrong prediction, because that's pretty much the theme of today's draft.
Do they go running back? Because again, that was the noise that was coming out of the Steel City for weeks. According to a lot of trustworthy beat writers there in Western Pennsylvania, saying the Steelers want somebody to complement James Conner. I think they're worried about his long-term health, particularly after last year. This would be a great spot for Dobbins. There are a lot of Steelers fans that happen to live in Eastern Ohio, so it'd be good for the brand as well. So I think it makes a ton of sense. Maybe they go Denzel Mims. I mean, who knows?
Where's Benny Snell? Is Benny Snell just not getting any love whatsoever? Is he done already?
It's just he's too much of a plotter, and that's the biggest issue for him. I mean, if this were 1990 and Christian Okoye is still all the rage, Benny Snell's getting 30 carries a game for whatever team he's playing for, right? Because he's that throwback north-south style, right, bruising between the tackles rusher. I just don't think they view him as a long-term option. He was decent in a pinch last year in a couple of games. I'm not going to discount him or discredit him for that. But I think they want somebody that's a little bit more dynamic, that brings more tools to the table. And J.K. Dobbins would certainly be that guy. I think Cam Akers wouldn't be a bad selection here either. Kid out of Florida State who played behind some really shoddy offensive lines at the Seminoles. A lot of people question his hands, but still caught a ton of balls down there in Tallahassee, and he could be a nice little complimentary 1-2 punch with James Conner.
All right. Well, the pick is in. They're going to it right now. Roger Goodell is looking sharp in that little sweater pullover of his. And
did he have another costume change? I haven't seen it yet. If he did,
he did. What was the prop on costume wardrobe changes for Roger Goodell?
Probably over under 1.5. Jalen Hurts, they're showing him right now. I wonder if he got the call. That was awesome.
I'm seeing Chase Claypool right here. They're showing Claypool now.
Claypool?
That's what they're showing. And it's Chase Claypool.
Oh, I kind of like that, actually. Chase Claypool is a freak. And we saw it at the Combine. If you're looking for the next Darren Waller, it's Chase Claypool. He's an athletic marvel, incredible size speed combination, put up some crazy numbers at Notre Dame, bit of a tweener because of the big bodied frame. But I mean, he fits a modern day NFL system. And I like that because you look at who does Pittsburgh have? They got Juju, right? He's going to bounce back. You got Deontay Johnson, not the biggest wide receiver. It's got to work more outside along with James Washington. So they need somebody to go along with Juju, kind of free him up to do his magic and work up the seam. And Claypool is that slayer in those situations. So I think this is an excellent pick. And in fact, I wish whoever the GM is eluding my name right now for Pittsburgh is, I wish he was running my Chicago Bears.
Kevin Colbert. Shout out to Kevin Colbert, GM of the Steelers. Where do you want your Bears to go? Last thoughts here before I let you get ready to go back on the radio.
I need a tackle. Offensive lineman, Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State, Josh Jones. Do it, Ryan Pace, or get your ass canned, which I'd be all right with too.
All right. Well, listen, I hope you get them. The pick is in. I don't know how long it's going to take them to tell us that the pick is in, but nevertheless, I know that I've got Michael.
We got 2 minutes. I got a little time here, Howard. Let's buy it.
You got some time? You ready? Here we go.
Yeah, come on, Bears.
Let's go, folks. Live reaction here. Brad Evans, fade the noise. Super excited. Oh, somebody's getting hugged. Somebody in Canada's getting hugged. That's not being socially distant there.
Is it a big-bodied guy?
I don't know. It was a guy with dreads in his hair. Oh, wait. Was that Clay? Who the hell is this? Why are we showing? Come on, guys. Picks in.
Claypool?
Make the announcement. Why are they not making the announcement? This is what I don't understand. If the pick is in, here he goes. Come on there, Roger.
Give it to me because I'm on delay here, Howard.
All right, I got you. And with the blah, blah, blah 50th pick of the NFL draft, Jalen Johnson.
Oh. All right.
I am going to send Brad Evans back to the dais at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. He's gonna have to gather his thoughts before he gets back on the air there. Brad, thank you so much for joining us here on the live stream, baby. I will expect my Noisy Huevos t-shirt in the mail. You can decorate my huevos anytime, buddy.
I would love to do that. And please pour me a tequila. I need the entire bottle.
I got you covered with that too. So, all right. Thanks so much, Brad. Appreciate you joining us here today. We'll catch you later on tonight. Enjoy the rest of the draft.
You too, amigo. We'll see you.
Peace.
The second round of the NFL draft is here. We're getting some skill players right off the top, including Detroit taking Georgia running back Deandre Swift at 5'9" and 215 pounds. He's a pretty big guy, but runs better than most people his size. He's a good shifty and elusive back.
What's going on, Fantasy Alarm Nation? Justin Fensterman back with you, and I want to talk about what the Bengals did to start out night 2 of the NFL Draft. Starting out in night 1, they got Joe Burrow with the first overall pick. So to start night 2, they pick a player that Joe Burrow actually faced in the national championship, T. Higgins, a receiver out of Clemson. This guy is huge, 6'4". It's going to be hard to guard him. And now he goes to a receiving core of A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, and John Ross. A.J. Green's fantasy value could be in a bit of trouble now that the Bengals have T. Higgins. He had over 1,100 receiving yards, almost 20 yards per catch. Speed is the one thing to be concerned about with this guy. He doesn't have as much speed as other receivers in his class, but the Bengals now have a new quarterback, and they grab a new receiver as well. They are definitely going with youth with their skill position players, at least right now with the draft. Burrow, and now to start out night 2, T. Higgins, 6'4", going to be hard to guard him.
The second round of the NFL draft is here. We're getting some skill players right off the top, including Detroit taking Georgia running back Deandre Swift at 5'9" and 215 pounds. He's a pretty big guy, but runs better than most people his size. He's a good shifty and elusive back. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield, but can also run with some power. For fantasy purposes, this really sets up for the dreaded running back by committee in Detroit with Kerryon Johnson. You have to figure that they didn't draft him in the second round for nothing. And this really, really hurts the season-long value of Kerryon Johnson. You have to figure that Swift is going to get the goal line carries. He's going to get a good number of targets, but he's not going to take over the backfield from Kerryon by any chance. I think you can see a real 50-50, maybe 60-40 in Kerryon's favor. But with not set value to begin with, this maybe makes me stay away from both in season-long leagues. In Dynasty leagues, Swift is a great guy to go after, especially with the injury concerns of Kerryon Johnson. Although Swift has dealt with a lot of injuries himself in college, this is going to be an interesting situation to monitor in the preseason. Please go to fantasyalarm.com to check out all of our draft coverage. Follow us on Twitter at FantasyAlarm, and of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel.
All right, so in the second round of Friday's draft, we've seen the Indianapolis Colts trade up from 44 to pick at 41. And with it, they made a pretty big splash taking Jonathan Taylor, running back out of the University of Wisconsin. You have to really like the prospects for Taylor this year. He's going to be running behind a great offensive line with Quentin Nelson and all the other pieces that they've got. The Colts offensive line was graded second best in run blocking last season by Pro Football Focus, so you love that initially for Jonathan Taylor. What you don't like is how this is going to impact Marlon Mack's value. Now, they could easily go into a bit of a timeshare between the two. Mack has missed a few games each of the last 3 years with some nagging injuries, so you don't really like it for Mack right now, but you do love it for Taylor. It's clear the Colts think that they have a window where they can go out and still win this year and possibly next year. They have Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and earlier in the second round, they used their first pick, 34th overall, I do apologize, but 34th overall to take Michael Pittman out of USC. He's a big 6'4" wide receiver, so with Taylor and Pittman, the Colts are going younger. They are very talented on offense. They have weapons. The question is if they can put it all together as Rivers' career comes to an end. But this is a great draft for the Colts in the second round so far. Great pick with Jonathan Taylor. Have to like his upside. Bad news for Marlon Mack.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's the NFL Draft live stream from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, powered by Fantasy Alarm. Some technical difficulties with Michael Fabiano. We apologize. He's going to be back on the radio a little later on. Technical difficulties, maybe, because in all honesty, Trevon Diggs was one of the wish list players for Jim Bowden and Fabs when he was on the show earlier this week. So that could just be like, I need a few moments to be by myself. Instead, I got Dan Malin here because, listen, there's some head-scratching picks going on right now. I can't make heads or tails of them. Malin, maybe you can help me. I don't know where to start. Do we start with the bizarro pick of your guy? I don't even what Duggar? Do we go with Duggar? Do we go with the fact that the Eagles have zero faith in Carson Wentz with this pick of Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, it's pretty surprising with the Eagles taking Hurts. We have been hearing that Hurts was initially thought to be a 4th or 5th round pick, but he had been moving his way up a lot of mocks in recent weeks. Very surprising that the Eagles take him in the 2nd round. Now, what this means for quarterback competition, you have to assume that Carson Wentz probably remains the starting quarterback, especially if there's an abbreviated training camp. OTAs probably get canceled. This kind of situation for rookie quarterbacks or rookie players, it's not ideal, especially for the quarterbacks. A shortened training camp does not do them a lot of favors. So for that reason, I think that the Eagles still probably roll with Carson Wentz. But, I mean, at least they have a really solid fallback option. This does suck for Wentz's prospects.
That's the thing. I'm not even worried about this year. Like, yeah, no training camp, whatever. Hurts is a guy who, a year down the road. But I mean, this tells me that the Eagles aren't even looking at Carson Wentz as their 2021 quarterback.
Yeah, no, that's definitely like a very valid point. But you have to really kind of admire the kind of player that Jalen Hurts developed into last year. He had 32 passing touchdowns with Oklahoma and 20 rushing touchdowns. He's pretty dynamic. The Eagles still have a decent offensive line. They could probably afford to go a little bit younger, but they retain most of the core guys. And if he gets the opportunity, I mean, you'd love to see what he could do in this offense, especially with the Eagles taking Jalen Reagor in the 1st round last night.
You grab a guy like Reagor in the 1st round with that speed, Hurts there. I mean, listen, it's going to be a very interesting thing. Dan Servidinio is a diehard Eagles fan, so he's doing I'll have to read what he writes up about this. So talk to me about your Patriots here, because we all had to have a little bit of a chuckle. Again, I saw they showed Bill Belichick's war room, which was like 2 laptops on the kitchen table, but it was a husky. Sit there. I love the Huskies. I have a husky. I have a few husky mixes here. Is that the genius behind the Patriots, or did that dog's paw hit the keyboard and then the commissioner was like, nope, sorry, Bill, can't roll it back for you?
So when you look at a lot of draft profiles for Kyle Duggar, when you hear the pick, it's almost like, well, who the hell is this guy? But then you hear what school he is, and like you've never forget the player, you've never even heard of where he's coming from. But he is like a small school find. I honestly had no idea who he was when the Patriots took him. I had to look him up. Apparently on his draft profile, he had a very late growth spurt. When he was entering high schools, he was relatively short, but he had really long arms. And when you're drafting a defensive back, you really want really long arms, huge hands. He has both of those. Now, he did hit his growth spurt. He's about 6 feet tall now. His tape is going to look mesmerizing only because he is an athlete that probably could have played at a D1 school, but he was playing at a D2 school against weaker competition. So he looks like an absolute superstar. But with the Patriots having older guys in the secondary, especially the McCourty twins, they're both over 30. They want to get a little bit younger. They got a decent prospect. He's not well known because of the school that he comes from, but he's got long arms, big hands, projects to do pretty well at the NFL level.
What do you think? Like, come on, speak as a fan here for a second. Take your analyst hat off.
As a fan, I probably wanted something a little more flashy, a little sexier pick. I was hoping that they might go Zach Bond, the outside linebacker from Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Loved his tape. I watched every snap from the Michigan game from last year, and he and that entire defense just owned Michigan all day long. So I was hoping that they would address that position. But they still have 4 more draft picks tonight. I'm hoping that they can make some more splashes.
Oh, I mean, listen, they've got tremendous draft capital. They traded back yesterday. They didn't even need to do that, which I thought was funny. But yeah, Impemba had Cole Kmet sitting on his wish list. Jalen Hurts would have been an intriguing option there as well. Just let him compete with Jarrett Stidham and see what ends up happening here. I don't think anybody's really got full confidence in Stidham yet. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. Let's talk about a couple of other players here from a fantasy standpoint. Here, let's talk wide receivers here.
Okay.
Bengals open it up with T. Higgins. Michael Pittman goes to the Colts with the second pick there. Laviska Shenault goes to the Jaguars. KJ Hamler to Denver. I mean, we've got some good fantasy value here, even though these are on teams that have established wideouts already.
I'm a big fan of Michael Pittman to the Indianapolis Colts. He's going to a veteran quarterback, and they have a very good offensive line. It's clear that the window for the Colts to win is short, but they want to make a run at it at least this year with Phillip Rivers coming to town. The offensive line is still great. They also drafted Jonathan Taylor. And although that hurts Marlon Mack's upside, the Colts offense is going to be perfectly fine. So
what upside?
But regardless, I do love Pittman to the Colts. T. Higgins, high upside player. It's a great weapon for Joe Burrow. It's clear that the Bengals might be a little bit worried about A.J. Green aging out. But again, like how I said previously, I'm worried about the abbreviated training camp. So, for Dynasty and keeper leagues, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, they're worth buying into. But if I'm looking at this year, I might go with Pittman over Higgins for this season.
You've cited the no prep, the shortened, no OTAs, training camp abbreviated. What's going to happen there? Denver pushing all in on the rookie wide receivers here. Jerry Jeudy yesterday, KJ Hamler here today. Cortland Sutton's only going to be a third-year wideout. Noah Fant's a third-year tight end or second-year tight end? Third-year tight end for Noah Fant.
I think he's second.
It's a young crew.
It is a young crew, and they
with
clearly
Drew Lock under center.
I don't understand why they would go with Hamler in the second round. If they wanted to make a splash in the first round, I mean, I get it. You want to get some weapons for Locke, but I think it just really depresses Cortland Sutton's value when he was coming on pretty strong last year. It's a bit of a head scratcher. I don't really get the second round pick when I thought that they maybe could have addressed the offensive line or gone defense with that pick. 2 wide receivers though, I mean, they're getting weapons for their guy.
That was the thing. I mean, John Elway spent years and years trying to draft himself. When he finally found himself in Drew Lock, now he's like, well, I got to have people to throw to. And Deshaun Hamilton and Tim Patrick certainly aren't getting it done there. On the other side here, let's talk about the Rams. The Rams get rid of Todd Gurley. They let him walk. They've got Malcolm Brown. They've got Darrell Henderson. They bring in Cam Akers, the running back out of Florida State. And it looks like, I mean, obviously, again, your abbreviated camp notwithstanding, Cam Akers looks like he's in a spot to see some good touches.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised that they just didn't go with J.K. Dobbins with this pick, but Cam Akers still had a good year last year with Florida State, 1,100 rushing yards, 18 total touchdowns. He can catch passes out of the backfield, which is kind of what they're looking for with Jared Goff. And, it sucks that Todd Gurley's not there anymore. He's now with Atlanta. Offensive line could probably use a little bit of help. But he's going to get the touches. There's no competition for Akers in Los Angeles this year.
And as you say J.K. Dobbins' name, he comes off the board and goes to the Baltimore Ravens, which, I mean, listen, they've got Mark Ingram there. Justice Hill was supposed to be something. Gus Edwards is there. I got to be honest with you and tell you, the Ravens, between Patrick Queen yesterday and Dobbins falling to them here today in the second round, I mean, is there a team that's had better luck sitting there at like the 23rd pick in the draft? I mean, this is the rich getting richer, I think.
Yeah, and I hate the Ravens. Just from recent memory with their playoff rivalry games with them and the Patriots. I'm not a big John Harbaugh guy. And I just hate how it always just seems how these players just fall to them, and they just seem to be the most fortunate crew. And you still have to like J.K. Dobbins. I know the Ravens have to replace Marshall Yanda, but the offensive line's still fine. They're going to run the ball a lot. They don't need to give it to him heavy his first year because Lamar Jackson's still going to run all over the place, and they'll give the ball to Mark Ingram. But it sucks because this is a super talented player out of Ohio State, and it's just another really, really talented guy that just falls to the Ravens, and it's just an embarrassment of riches for them with young talent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Engram. I don't know how much Engram. I think he just signed an extension with the Ravens last year, but I mean, he's going to be aging out soon. I mean, maybe they saw something. They didn't see anything in Justice Hill that everybody else seemed to think. So he's obviously struggling somehow there. And then Gus Edwards. I mean, I don't even think he's got much time left on his deal here. Before we scooch on out of here, and yes, Dan Malin, everybody's going to be joining us on the group live stream later on tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So he will be back. Don't worry. He's just doing some fill-in work here. As we say goodbye to you for the time being, though, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock here. The pick is in. Mel Kiper thinks they need defense. Where do you think the Fins go?
I don't really know if the Fins necessarily need defense. They address defense heavily in free agency. You know, they got Byron Jones from Dallas. That addresses a huge cornerback need. They took Kyle Van Noy from the Patriots. I would like to see them possibly try to rebuild the offensive line a little bit more, possibly get a few more weapons for their young quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. I don't think defense is as big of a need as Kiper thinks.
Well, they went Robert Hunt with their first pick in this round and handled that, and now they go Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle, Alabama. They get a big old boy at 6'6", 311. This pretty nice run stuffer here.
Yeah, I mean, all you're looking for a run stuffer is just a guy with a big, thick body. He's 6'6", over 300 pounds. He's got it. You know, he'll be able to. Yeah, you could suit up, Howard. Get you some pads, a helmet. You'll fit right in. I could probably fit right in.
My mom won't sign the permission slip. Sorry. All right. Well, Dan, do me a favor, man. Thank you so much, first of all. Appreciate you jumping on last minute here. Appreciate all the work you're doing inside the chat and keeping the conversation alive there. Doing some videos. You had a video out. Who is your did you do the Deandre Swift video?
I didn't do Swift. I did Jonathan Taylor for the Colts.
Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to go watch that one right now because I'm on a little bit of a break here. Coming up next on the schedule, you don't want to miss out. You've got Adam Ronis, Lisa Ann, Bob Harris, Jeff Ratcliffe, and Justin Fensterman. They're coming up to give you more coverage here in the second round. And yes, both Dan Malin and I will be back at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So stick around. More to come here from the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio draft coverage powered by Fantasy Alarm.
After addressing the defense on day one, we see Jacksonville go offense here with their first pick in day two. A little bit surprising to see them go wide receiver with Colorado's Laviska Shenault. I figured maybe we would see a running back here, given all the recent news regarding Leonard Fournette and potentially being traded or being unhappy being in Jacksonville. But Shenault is a very physical receiver, should win a lot of one-on-one matchups. He's going to join a receiving group that has DJ Chark and D.D. Westbrook. Shenault's going to give Gardner Minshew, who the team is just committed to after dealing Nick Foles, another target to go ahead and try to build up this team's passing attack. I expect them to go ahead and go more with the offense again later in this draft, but nothing wrong here getting Shenault where they did. He's one of the top-ranked receivers in that second tier of guys after the top ones went off the board, so seeing Shenault go early second round makes a lot of sense here. For fantasy purposes, I would have liked to see him go in a better spot. Again, we don't really know exactly what Minshew's going to go ahead and bring to the table in terms of passing attack. He does have other guys to contend with, like I said, with Chark and Dede Westbrook, but overall, there's a great talent, a very physical guy, good downfield threat. So let's go ahead and, don't hate the pick. We'll see what happens.
Back here for another hour of coverage. Fantasy Alarm and SiriusXM merging together. I'm Adam Ronis from Fantasy Alarm, along with Bob Harris, Football Diehards, Jeff Ratcliffe, Pro Football Focus, Lisa Ann from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, my favorite co-host, and Justin Fensterman from Fantasy Alarm, who I am forced to co-host with and try and coexist. Obviously, a lot has gone on in the hour that we were away, so let's get to it. Let's start it off, Jeff. Cam Akers going to the Rams. Obviously, Todd Gurley gone. Henderson was there from last year. We saw he didn't get much. I mean, you got to be loving this spot for Akers, correct?
Absolutely. I've been talking about this for a couple months. I did expect a day 2 pick for the Rams. A lot of people, when Todd Gurley was let go, tweeted out something to the effect of Darrell Henderson's season, SZN. I tweeted out, it is now Cam Akers' season. He's a 3-down player. Now, of course, Henderson's going to be involved. That's why they drafted him, to give the spark. But, man, this is a sexy landing spot. That's an offense that isn't as potent as it was in their Super Bowl run, but still has some juice. And McVay is still a very strong offensive mind, obviously.
And they just picked Van Jefferson, and Denzel Mims still on the board. So something going on there, folks.
Bob, Akers for fantasy drafts this year, how high do you have him right now?
I move him right up among the rookies. I'm going to move him up right behind Edwards, Alar, and Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to say probably the lower end of that, maybe even as far down as running back. A low end running back 2 for me right now would be where I'm at. I'm a little higher on the other 2, but look, this is a great landing spot for him. I think it's bad news, horrible news for Darrell Henderson, and I think this is the kind of weapon that maybe they'll lean a little more heavily on than what we saw them lean, at least from the start of the season with Todd Gurley.
Guys, one of the reports that I actually saw, and you guys can tell me whether or not they were full of it, but I saw that the Rams actually said that they may not want to go with just one running back, though. So from a fantasy outlook, these are just reports at this point. But thinking of it right now, when you see something like that was said a couple of weeks ago, then does that raise questions to you about this guy short term?
No, everything we heard was a lie.
If it was 2005, sure, I'd be really concerned, but not in 2020. It's so rare for a team to use a guy as a three-down guy, and I think the Rams learned their lesson in 2018. They ran Todd Gurley into the ground between 2017 and 2018, and it ultimately potentially cost them a Super Bowl. We'll never know. But if a healthy Todd Gurley was in that game against New England, and now Belichick has to scheme for that, maybe they give New England a run for their money in that contest. We'll never know, unfortunately. But, yeah, it makes sense they're going to do that. And, hey, Cam Akers, you can be an RB2 in a committee backfield, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, and I think that's what we're looking for. And Henderson, he was such an intriguing, weapon, the kind of guy that you would expect a forward-thinking coach, an innovative offensive mind like Sean McVay to use, and it just never happened last year, whether that was due to some early injury issues for Henderson or maybe they just never, quite got there in the development. I just feel like they need to come on with that if Henderson's going to have any interest to us. For me, he's kind of off the radar right now from a fantasy perspective, certainly in redraft leagues.
Around what round do you guys see Akers going right now in fantasy drafts?
4 or 5?
Probably 5. Yeah, I was thinking 5.
All right, the other big story was the Eagles taking Jalen Hurts, the quarterback from Oklahoma. I don't think anyone thought he would go there. Jeff, I know you're from that area. There's been a lot of negative reaction on Twitter. What do you think they were thinking here? What are they doing?
So I apologize if my cell phone keeps buzzing because all of my friends are currently texting me what the F is going on. But I think we talked about this on air on SiriusXM, which if you're watching this, you can also check out on the app for free right now. We think this might be Taysom Hill plus. And that's going to be intriguing if we start to see more teams go that route. Jalen Hurts is super athletic, can do a lot for you, and now adds that different dynamic. They brought in a dynamic guy yesterday in Rager. Now they have another dynamic guy who may be a little bit positional versatile. I don't think he's truly viewed as a quarterback by most teams. Taysom Hill plus would be pretty sexy. We're going to start to see more teams do this.
Right. I wonder if it hurts. And I'm just looking at a quote from Press Taylor, their passing game coordinator from earlier this year, where he thinks, he believes the future of offensive football includes 2 passers on the field at one time. I think, I don't know how Lee Sand feels about Carson Wentz, but kind of if you're splitting hairs at draft time and you like him almost as much as somebody else, you're kind of going, maybe the decision was made for you just now.
Yeah, Lee Sand, does that concern you about Wentz at all? We know he's had some injuries. Does that make you think twice about taking him?
I think we think twice about taking him because of the injuries, right? But to see this cause me to change any difference in that, no. He kind of ranks the same place as me until he goes down and Hurts comes in.
Justin, how surprised were you when they took Hurts there with Philadelphia?
I was not expecting it. I was actually expecting them to maybe take a Mims. I know they took a Rager already, but still try to add even more. It just shows right there, as Lisa was talking about here, you can't really trust the health too much with Wentz at this point. This definitely shows that.
We see J.K. Dobbins go to the Ravens. Jeff, thoughts there? Obviously, Mark Ingram getting older. They got Justice Hill there as well. What does this mean for Dobbins for this year and long term?
Yeah, Justice Hill, I never really was drinking that Kool-Aid. He's a change of pace guy. He's a guy who's better for football than he'll be for fantasy. Sorry for any dynasty owners out there. I'm just not buying into it. But this is Mark Ingram's replacement. Mark Ingram is coming to the end of his career and a pretty good career. Although, remember, it was very disappointing early on. He's been a rock-solid pro coming off a strong season last year. I think we're going to slowly start to see him phased out and Dobbins phased in over the course of this season. The one challenge, of course, when Lamar's on the field, that does eat up a bunch of carries you could potentially get. I think we'll see Dobbins as a 200-plus carry guy, but not a high 200s or even possibly cracking the 300 mark. That's not this year, by the way. That's sort of like the next couple years.
Bob, could this be a player that we're looking at maybe in the second half? I mean, Engram is getting older. Maybe he gets a little banged up. I mean, he was hurt late in the year. Could that be a scenario where we're looking at him as a fantasy asset down the stretch?
Yeah, I think he's going to be one of those guys that comes on as the season goes on. You know, we see it every year, and I think he'll be drafted. You know, and that kind of profile coming in, I think it knocks Mark Ingram down a fair amount, and you know, maybe makes him about even, and maybe I'm looking at the cheaper guy as I get into drafts at this point. But if I'm taking a longer term view of the overall season, I think Dobbins is the guy I'd want to have just based on the youth and you know, the wear and tear on Engram is, you know, I mean, it's not as great as it is for a lot of guys his age, because I mean, he did a lot of sharing over the course of his career, and look, he's been really effective sharing over the course of his career too. We could say that as well. So, and this team's going to run a hell of a lot. So maybe there's enough value in, you know, in that duo, given the way the offense is designed. But Lamar Jackson's going to get his share too. So this is going to be an interesting one. I want to see how far they fall, and I'll be interested based on the price more than anything else.
Elisa, and obviously the Ravens are a running game you want to invest in. You have the threat of Lamar Jackson. Yes, he does take away some touches from those running backs, but it opens up a lot of lanes. Is Mark Ingram someone that you're still going to be interested in as he gets a year older?
Yeah, I'm a bit afraid because I had so much success with him last season. Makes me a little bit fearful to go back to the well. Also, again, with the age. But, you know, Lamar Jackson has also been very open that he plans to not run as much this season. So we see these stock talks already starting to happen, preparing us for the worst. I will not be as heavy on Mark Ingram as I was last season.
Justin, you buy into this comment from Lamar Jackson the other day saying he's going to run less? I mean, he ran, I think it was 179 times last year. I mean, I think everyone doesn't expect him to run that much again, but are you buying his comments that he is going to run less?
I believe you and I discussed this a few nights ago, in which you told me I should not buy into that when I posed this question to you. As for me, maybe a little bit less, but still, I'm not fully buying into that. No, this pick was a little bit of more of a head scratcher for me when it comes to, I'll say this as well with Engram, because in one of our mocks that we've done on the channel, I took Engram in which I believe was the 5th round. Now I'm not even sure I take him there anymore. Might be going down to the 6th, at least for me.
Jeff, we saw Chase Claypool selected by the Steelers, wide receiver from Notre Dame. Talk about the fit there with Pittsburgh.
So Chase Claypool is an interesting guy. You know, there was a lot of people going into the combine saying, is this Devin Funchess 2.0? But he answered that question running, you know, the impressive 40 time at his size, so showed explosive ability in the jumps as well, probably closer to his former teammate Miles Boykin than he is to Devin Funchess. So I don't think he's going to convert to tight end. I think this may be a little bit of a statement of how the team views James Washington. Maybe James Washington is more of just a guy to them than a long-term starter. And now you're cycling. This is what Pittsburgh does. Cycling another guy. Let's see if he hits. And I mean, their hit rate has been pretty darn impressive. So just that alone now does pique my interest a lot with Chase Claypool.
Well, the Jets traded back. I saw a lot of their fans upset. They clearly want a wide receiver. The Jets get Denzel Mims. Bob, what about the fit here? What does this do for the rest of the Jets receivers? And what's Mims' fantasy value this year?
Well, it remains to be seen. I want to find out why the hell he slid so far. Before I get too excited, but I mean, the skill set is there. You know, great perimeter receiver. Had strong showings after the season, but he's got great. I mean, look, he's a good physical presence, sub 4.4 speed. I think this is kind of the Robbie Anderson replacement that we were all hoping for. All due respect to Rashad Perriman, who may not quite be that. I mean, he's very athletic. Drops have been an issue for him a little bit, but I'm really curious why he's fallen so far.
Justin, you look pretty happy with that pick.
Yes, considering I was pretty pissed that the Jets traded out because I wanted them to get him before. Then they traded out. I said, same old Jets, right? Wrong. They were able to get Mims. Certainly needed a receiver. I mean, Crowder and Perriman, yikes. So that's why you saw the old fist bump there, because I just was very happy with Mims. Also, I love the fact that he's ups too, and that's something that I think is going to benefit him along with the speed that Bob was talking about.
Jeff, where did you have Mims on your board? Were you surprised that he fell this far?
I'm surprised Van Jefferson went as early as he did. I'm just not high on Van Jefferson alone. Never posted a dominator rating of 20% or higher, so he technically never had a breakout year at the college level. That is very concerning. I'd be careful with Van Jefferson in Dynasty, but Mims, I had him as my number 8 wideout in this year's class, and a loaded class at that, so that's saying something. I like the idea of Robbie Anderson replacement because Mims is a much better and bigger Robbie Anderson. Right. That's really good for Sam Darnold as well. He needed some help. The Jets got it. This is a heck of a value as well. I'm very happy for the Jets right now.
Two things real quick. My friend Matt Waldman with the rookie scouting portfolio does a comps him to Troy Williamson, except for the hands. He's actually got hands. Troy Williamson didn't. But, if we remember the skill set that Troy Williamson had when he went to the Minnesota Vikings, just the speed threat was able to get open. And second thought, all the Van Jefferson shares I have in Dynasty already just wept when Jeff Ratcliffe ruined them.
Sorry, man.
What do we think about the Jets fantasy receivers? What order, your preliminary rankings, would you rank them right now?
I mean, for me, Crowder is still the top guy.
Right, yeah.
He's a wide receiver 4, though. Low ceiling wide receiver 4. I'd love to believe in Rashad Perryman more, but I just don't. I can't invest in 5 games when the rest of the 4 years was really crap. So Mims could very well slide into the 2 spot at some point. I don't think he will to open, but at some point it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, there's a lot of nobodies beyond that. I think it's Chris Herndon's season. He's going to be maybe not. No, I think Mims finds a great spot, and I'm going to be interested to see, how Sam Darnold develops. Look, I have the same concerns about the Adam Gase-related issues that others have had, right? I mean, we saw everyone who left Miami who turned into fantastic players. It's a lengthy list, or a surprisingly longer list than you would expect. So I'm a little worried about Darnold's progression, but boy, he comes on late in the season. If he puts a whole season together and has a weapon like Mims and Crowder, whatever we think about him from a fantasy perspective, is a pretty valuable tool. Le'Veon Bell's still a capable receiver as well, and if Chris Herndon, Ryan Griffin add a little bit to that mix, maybe he can get the job done.
Lisa, how do you feel about Le'Veon Bell this year? He got a huge amount of volume last year, but just wasn't very productive. They didn't use him enough in the passing game. As Bob alluded to, that's one of his strengths. We didn't see it enough. Are you back on Le'Veon Bell this year? Because he is cheaper than he was last year.
That's the thing. He's so much cheaper than he was last year that he could prove to be a value. But at the same time, again, what are they going to take the time to switch up when they're not working together right now? Lev Bell really in a situation he doesn't want to be in. We saw how productive he was 3 years ago. I'd love to grab him at the right price because I think we're going to see him at the right price. Those have lost interest. They did work on the line a bit for Lev Bell with one of their picks last night, so there would be more opportunity for him. But it's, again, like Bob said, it's really the Adam Gase issue that makes you more concerned than anything.
Right, these guys. When you think about, I'm sorry, Adam, talk over you, but you think about this guy. Everywhere he's gone, he's viewed as a great offensive mind. Going from Denver to Chicago as a coordinator, goes to Miami, goes to the New York Jets, and you hear people in the business talk about him as just a really impressive guy when he talks to ownership and hires ups. But I mean, his last huge success was with a guy named Peyton Manning, right? I mean, I have to, I'm not saying he's not capable. It's just he hasn't demonstrated that capability since he's had a super good quarterback.
Jeff, do you see a change in this year? Second year with the Jets here. Does it get better? Do they have enough to provide fantasy relevance?
I don't think it's going to get worse. I don't know if it's going to be a dramatic improvement. I'm really hoping to see a progression from Darnold. We saw it over the course of his rookie season, that second chunk of the year, he really looked like he was starting to take to the NFL. So I'm hoping to see that. They got him the help that he needs. It's not a massive upgrade, but it is an upgrade at wideout. And then having Le'Veon Bell, say what you will about him, he's inefficient, but at least you know what you're going to get out of him. You have that stability out of the backfield. So I think there's some fantasy value to be had ultimately because people don't view the Jets, they don't put them up on that pedestal. So you can swoop in, said it yesterday, don't love Lev Bell, but I will take him at a value if you leave him there in my drafts.
Right,
guys. I actually
workload.
For auctions, I took him for about $47 in half-point PPR leagues, and I'm certainly not going to pay that this year. But if, let's say, you're reaching 39 or 40, do I then pull the trigger there? That's the biggest question I'm facing.
Right. I think, again, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify this. After 30-some years of playing fantasy football, this has been an evolving situation at running back. And it seems to me the biggest factor right now is opportunities. And if you have a guy on a team that's getting all the opportunities, he doesn't have to be the best back in football. He just has to be serviceable. And we saw that with Bell last year. I mean, especially if the price falls down, I think you're going to find value there just based on the workload alone.
Somebody brought up the name Chris Herndon before. A lot of people were excited for him. The suspension came back from injury. We saw what he did as a rookie. I mean, is this guy going to be of value as a backup tight end or no?
Again, you go to the Frank Coyle, the old draft master who had the Hindu theory. Everyone was a reincarnation. He's the second coming of Julius Thomas. Because why Adam Gase? We keep thinking Adam Gase is going to turn these guys into things. He couldn't even turn Julius Thomas back into Julius Thomas, for crying out loud. So, look, I have hopes for Chris Herndon. I think he's a talented player. He has shown, he's shown a fair amount of ability, but it's a very narrow band. And I just don't want to. I got caught up in it a little bit last year. I don't want to get too caught up into it this year. If the price is right, I'll jump in, but I'm not going to go overboard again.
Where does Ryan Griffin fit into all of this as well?
In a bar in Nashville somewhere.
Poor kid.
We also saw KJ Hamler go to Denver. Obviously, people were thinking, all right, they got Jerry Jeudy. Good move for Drew Lock. Is Drew Lock going to be like this popular QB2 that people expect to pop off now with the weapons, including Melvin Gordon in the backfield? Jeff, you don't seem too enthused.
No, I don't. I think I'd rather go in the direction of somebody like Joe Burrow, bide my time even with somebody like Tua or Justin Herbert, as opposed to Drew Lock. I just, those players are just a higher caliber of player. You can surround a player with talent, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to fantasy value. And I think it's going to be an up and down season for sure for Denver. We saw last year Lock at times, upside. At times, doesn't look like he should be on an NFL field. So bridging those two, I don't know. I'm not bullish on him.
Yeah, I'd rather go Daniel Jones if I'm going for that upside guy myself, the late round upside. But look, if it comes down to it and Locke is way cheaper, I miss out on Daniel Jones. He did show me enough last year to take that flyer on him late in the draft, and not just based on what he did, but what I love about Cortland Sutton. And, Jerry Jeudy, then you mentioned Hamler. Then, go to Noah Fant. They have some pretty good guys in the backfield, and Melvin Gordon. I stumble every time. Stop me now. But Philip Lindsay's still viable. So look, they have a lot of weapons around this kid, and Pat Shurmur comes in to run this offense. We'll see a change there. So I'm not jumping in hard, but if it comes down to it, and I miss out on some of the guys I like with upside, Locke still has that just based on what we saw last year.
Lisa Ann, who piques your interest in the Denver offense for this year?
Yeah, I looked at Cortland Sutton last year. It was such a value. I don't think he'll be as much of a value this year, but I'm definitely going to be very high on Melvin Gordon. I think the thirst is really there for him. I think getting a new home was really important. I'll talk about it so Bob Harris doesn't have to, but I think he's going to show up to shine. I think he really wants to work. We live with a little bit of regret. He made a tough decision last year. It didn't work out well for him. Now he's got a fresh start and a new opportunity. I think he can make a lot of it. So I'm going to be pretty high on Melvin Gordon this year.
Justin, how do you look at these Broncos receivers? Did Cortland Sutton take a huge hit with the addition of Jerry Jeudy and now Hamler?
No, I think there's room for both of them, but I'll also say, for all of them rather, but I'll also say, and this is something that Harris and I talked about after one of the mocks as well, with you're looking for someone else, and Ronis, you mentioned him tonight, Noah Fant. This is a guy that you could get at the end of your drafts, and I remember talking to Harris, who was sniping me the entire mock all night long. It's like we were sharing screens. And when I took Fant, I wasn't too happy about it, Bob, but I remember you telling me for right at the end of your draft, which is where I'm normally looking for tight ends anyway, stupid or not, Noah Fant's going to be there late.
Right, if I can't get Tyler Eifert, wait, no, I'm not getting Tyler Eifert, I'm just kidding.
Even in a 2 tight end league? Even in
maybe.
a 2? No, you still won't do it. Come on.
Jeff, very tough question right now for you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but the Packers are on the clock. Do they go with a quarterback here?
Who is Jordan Love's backup? Can we get that guy?
What do you think the Packers do here?
I mean, they have to go with a wide receiver.
I would sure hope. Yeah, I'd sure hope it's a wide receiver at this point. There's still plenty on the board. Get a guy like Tyler Johnson. There's quality players. Brian Edwards. Get a guy like that in there. I think it'll at least calm that fan base a little bit.
Yeah, so they are on the clock. We'll see what they do here. Tyler Johnson, intriguing name. I was talking to someone, and they were hoping that their team can land him in the third round. The Packers, their pick is in, and let's see who they select. And it is A.J. Dillon, running back, Boston College. Well, they got to look at the skill player, but wow, reaction there, Bob.
My reaction is going to be poor. I mean, look, I wasn't all in on Aaron Jones going in at the price he's at right now, just because there's going to be touchdown regression. He's not going to get those 19 touchdowns this season. Now he's definitely not getting those 19 touchdowns. And somewhere Jamal Williams is pounding the same table Aaron Rodgers was, going, what? That was my pick. So look, I like Dillon an awful lot. I was hoping he'd find a clearer path to workload. Maybe this is gives us an idea of the direction this offense is going to continue to take. And I don't know that it's bad news for Aaron Rodgers or the receivers who are capable of putting up some fantasy numbers. Devontae Adams and nobody else. I don't know. We'll see if, we all have high hopes for Allen Lazard. We have high hopes for somebody every year because they don't add any frontline players. So adding another running back, I mean, anything you can add to this offense in terms of skill player is going to help the whole picture. But from a fantasy perspective, this is not the best news.
Jeff, your thoughts here on Packers taking Dillon?
It feels like every step since they've drafted Aaron Jones, they've wanted to find reasons to either spell him or limit his touches. So there might be more to this story than what we realize. Obviously, Aaron Jones was off the charts efficient from a touchdown standpoint last year, but you're not getting Dillon and not using him in early down situations. Obviously, that's his bread and butter. That's what he did at Boston College, 835 carries over the last 3 years. This is not good if you're an Aaron Jones owner. And in fact, I hope you maybe tried to trade him in Dynasty before this point, because his arrow is now pointing down.
Right, and this is not good news for Dillon. I mean, if you were, hoping for a young running back, especially a guy with that kind of, physical ability to come in and be a hammer, I mean, is he going to really get that opportunity that we all would like to see him get as fantasy owners? I don't know that he is.
Yeah, like you said, Jeff, there's got to be something here, because obviously the fantasy community, we've been clamoring for Aaron Jones to get more touches all the time. I even remember, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the first game of the year last year, Thursday night. We didn't see it against the Bears. We didn't see a ton of Aaron Jones. Then Jamal Williams got hurt. He had that concussion. We saw more Jones. He obviously excelled. But there has to be something there that he keeps. It seems like they don't want to unleash him, because I actually don't like this, because I have been avoiding Aaron Jones. Like you said, the touchdown regression, it's coming. I mean, and I don't even think he had 300 touches combined. I don't want that out of my first round pick where Jamal Williams was still there. And now we got Dillon there too. So I don't like this, because it might drop Aaron Jones a bit for people. All right, Lisa Ann, where were you on Aaron Jones? Were you taking this guy late first round because of his productive year last year?
I only had him in one league last year, which was, he was a difference maker. I'm not willing to take him in the first round because, Grant, I thought there would definitely be this regression. And now I'm looking at this situation, another shared backfield. It's going to make it a little bit tougher. And with Aaron Jones, what he did last season, he'll never duplicate. So you have to be willing to say, hey, would you be happy with half of that production? And at half that production, I just don't think he's a first-round pick.
Right. I mean, if you think about you look at his total carries, I mean, it just, they were rising nicely. I think that ends. And, maybe Matt LaFleur does not worship at the church of yards per carry that I worship at. when I'm looking at running backs. I mean, the first 2 years, 5.5 yards per carry was pretty damn impressive. And last year, 4.6 wasn't horrible, especially when you factor in the touchdowns. But beyond the touchdowns, I think that kind of, play-to-play ability to make positive yards that's hard to replace.
Justin, so they didn't take a wide receiver like some of us hoped. So Davante Adams, huge target share. I mean, how high would you draft Davante Adams, who obviously had the injury, but if you look at his last 5 games, including the playoffs, I mean, he tore it up.
He did. And with that, thinking of mocks that I've been in where I took Aaron Jones 9th overall, I almost want to replace him now with Davante Adams in that spot. You and I talked about this, Adam, and you were screaming about the regression that's coming for him. But still, I felt it was more of a safe pick because I like to build my teams a certain way, and that's with a lot of running backs because what we saw last year, hard to find on the waiver wire. Now with Jones, I mean, where does he drop? Late second? Early third?
Boy, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him go 7, 8, 9 in that range is where he's been going in early drafts. So maybe he slips early second potentially. We'll just have to see how that pans out. How are you guys? Are you guys going running back heavy this year? I mean, we saw it last year. I've seen it a lot so far. You're seeing like 9 running backs go in the first round. So if you're in that spot late first round, are you tempted to go running back? Or if you feel the wide receiver is the best player, will you do it? Bob, how are you approaching it this year? Because, those are tough calls. If you pass on those running backs, you might not like what's there. But when you got some of those elite wide receivers, how are you approaching it?
I think you can make an argument for Michael Thomas, fairly early. There's no reason, especially in point per reception, there's no reason to believe that, barring injury, that he's going to have a significant decrease in workload or targets and production. I mean, obviously expecting last year is crazy, but I think if you want to make a play without a hell of a lot of downside, Michael Thomas is it. And I mean, I've seen, you can make an argument for him maybe ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, maybe ahead of Dalvin Cook. I happen to like those guys a little more. But I think beyond that, when you get into Mixon, Kamara, Derrick Henry, we'll take Aaron Jones out of the conversation, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake. I mean, I think, look, Hopkins falls out of that, that top tier for me. So it's Thomas and then Adams for me as the likely only first round picks I see at wide receiver.
Jeff, your thoughts on, the running back heavy approach early? I mean, and again, it's pushing some elite. I've seen Julio Jones go mid-second round.
Well, I think that with any draft, you have to approach it from a game theory standpoint. And that means that, if everybody is doing something and you're doing that same thing, you're probably not going to have an advantage. So if everybody's going running back heavy, then that creates a massive advantage at wide receiver. And I have found myself going wide receiver, just because that's the way the board fell in that particular draft. So heading into the draft, you have to have a flexible approach and be able to apply multiple strategies at the same time to exploit your opponents. I think a lot of people look at it like, hey, I'm just drafting my team. No, you're playing a game against other people, and the object is to win the freaking game. So if they're going to make mistakes, make them pay for those mistakes. Typically, though, most often I'm finding myself with a running back in the first round, then some combination of either three wideouts or two wideouts and a tight end in the next 3 rounds. But then that middle round running back value is there. I don't know. I think that might be the strategy that unfolds for me in a lot of drafts this year.
Lisa, I know you've already done several best ball leagues. Have you noticed the common theme with your teams, or has it been different? And where have you been going in the first couple rounds of draft?
It's been a variety. Luckily getting to mix up my draft spot has really helped. But there have been 2 that I've been where I saw Michael Thomas go in the 3rd pick of the first round. I mean, it's not surprising. It's interesting, and it's a different way to build, especially in a best ball. I think in the season-long redraft, the mocks that I've been doing, I look at it a little bit differently because you are looking for that health, right? You're looking at the running back situation, not knowing how long they're going to make it through the season at 100%. So you're trying to grab. But once it gets to like Joe Mixon, I'm kind of off, and I'm going to go wide receiver right there. And again, that first 3 rounds, best player available is so important to me. And also looking at now these new situations where it's going to even be hard to handcuff properly. You now have two backs that you're wondering who is going to steal the rest of the workload from this lead back and how is this going to work out. So in a solid situation, if I can get Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams, I'm going for it.
Justin, I know your strategy has been to start a draft with two tight ends. How has that worked out for you so far?
and clearly, guys, you hear that my co-host on Alarm After Hours does not listen to a word that I say. Imagine broadcasting with this guy 3 nights a week. Yeah.
You know what? I've never had a problem. Broadcasting with him is as smooth as it goes. But then again, you did say that I was your favorite. But you know what? I listen to your show. He brings all the good information, and then he's got to talk you off the ledge for spreading ill will out there and bad info, Justin. I mean, you know I'm always going to be on Ronis' side. That's just how it goes.
I was just about to ask you, Lisa, are you sure you're listening to our show? Because if you were listening to our show, you're talking too much when it comes to complimenting Ronis here. This guy's a bully. He picks on me. He loves you very much, and he doesn't like me. If I was working with a Harris or a Jeff Ratcliffe, I wouldn't get treated like that.
All right, I will close on this. Everything would be different if it didn't start out with you guys making some fake text message and this whole little conspiracy thing you got going. If your relationship didn't start out that way, everything would be very different right now. That's my closing statement.
Thank you, Lisa, and that is absolutely true. Bob, we're one pick away from the end of round 2. Panthers are on the clock. What was your biggest takeaway from round 2?
I guess it was Jonathan. In general, the Colts. I mean, getting Higgins, getting Jonathan Taylor. I mean, it's just been a great draft, and I wanted to, we mentioned it as we were ending the stream. I think the first hour, you throw in DeForest Buckner there. Chris Ballard is doing great things. So something also that, just as we watch some of the running back situations that are developing, some of the tandems, I do think something that Jeff mentioned, comes into play because these guys are teaming up. You get a wider range of mid-round running backs available because, as Mark Ingram's price and J.K. Dobbins, they kind of bring each other down, and maybe the same situation with the Rams and maybe now with, A.J. Dillon coming in. I mean, you see some of these pairings, that's going to increase the bandwidth of those mid-range running backs, and maybe that does make it a little easier to take the approach that Jeff talks about and going with the receivers early, getting those frontline guys and getting the tight end early that we often like to do.
I think Adam may have fell asleep on us, Bob. Not saying you're boring, but he is definitely taking a snooze.
Well, I'm not talking about Melvin Gordon. I put everyone to sleep.
I got a question. What Adam was asking about here. This is the death of multiple running backs that we may have had hopes for fantasy purposes. Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, Darrell Henderson, Aaron Jones, potentially even on that list in the second round. Not good for running backs for sure.
Guys, I want to ask you about Troutman as well, who, Jeff, I know you said could be the best tight end coming out of this class. I mean, we've only seen Cole Kmet go thus far, but Troutman's a big dude. Like, the size alone sells me on this guy. We'll watch it tape. I mean, which team do you think is most suitable for him at this point?
That's a good question. I don't know necessarily team fit per se. What I like about him, I don't know if we can necessarily gauge much outside of maybe his Senior Bowl tape because he was playing against FCS competition and just straight up dominating those suckers down there at that level. I mean, hey, they're good football players, but he was outclassing them. There's no doubt about it. The player who he reminds me the most of is another small schooler tight end in Dallas Goedert. And I think, if we see him step into a situation similar to Goddard where there's already an established tight end, he doesn't have to be the guy out of the gate. We don't have high expectations for him right away. That was the nice thing about Goddard. He was the number one tight end in that class as well. We were in, Dallas two years ago and then said, oh, he went to Philly. No, he went to Philly, and that was actually pretty good because now we're not saying, oh, he sucks because he's not scoring 10 touchdowns and putting up 900 yards in his second season. So if Troutman could do that, give him 3 years to develop, I think he could be a very, very solid option at the pro level.
Right. And, beyond that, I mean, I'm not a big I'm not a big enthusiast when it comes to tight ends outside of dynasty. I mean, there's going to be some development. Not a lot of these guys come in. You're going to get spike weeks. They're going to show up one week just enough to we saw it with T.J. Hawkinson. We saw it with Noah Fant last year. I mean, sometimes we get a little more out of them, but I mean, I think the general expectation is much like wide receivers plus. You've got a little development time on these tight ends, so more of a dynasty look for me than a redraft look.
I mean, I would say he'd be a great fit for the Dallas Cowboys, Troutman.
Yeah.
I'd like that. More mouths.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. I mean, just because he would have the time to develop, that would be a good look there. We got the Bengals up right now.
Yeah. I mean, what about the Redskins, though? I mean, that's another team that could use a tight end. I mean, could you see that? Because, some of the guys that I've been thinking that could fit for them besides Troutman, who you just talked about, what about a Hunter Bryant?
Yeah, I guess there is a bit of a need there. Look, I don't know if they're going to be the same kind of, I guess you bring in the Carolina Panthers crew, maybe you would have some expectations for the tight end getting some heavy usage. So, yeah, I don't know if Jeremy Sprinkle is the guy that they want to hang their fortunes on at that position. So that seems like a pretty reasonable call there, Justin Fensterman. Almost like you knew what you were talking about for a minute.
Listen, I try to fool you guys as much as I can.
I think since Adam's down, he may have texted him that information. I'm just saying.
What is this, Lisa? You're supposed to be on Team Fancy here, not Team Ronis. Ronis, a heel. Come on.
You know what, Fancy? I was so on Team Fancy until you started doing a show with Adam. That changed everything for me. And now it's I got this Team Adam all the way. It's just how it goes. Team Adam and Dallas Cowboys and the New York Mets. That's what really matters.
All you Cowboys fans are everywhere. I mean, seriously, I can't escape Cowboys fans. Half the staff at Fantasy Alarm is Cowboys. I'm sitting there. Everyone's cheering on CeeDee Lamb, and I'm just sitting there as the Jets fan. That's pretty much what my life became at that point.
Yeah.